choosing to solemnize and reflect and cry in our heart as we have been always doing, and also call upon these our heroes to continue to fight with us until we are free. And they want to bring something out. There will be consequences for even trying to bring out a flyer to post for that day. There will be consequences. I want every Biafran in Biafra land, whether you are anywhere in Biafra land, you will sit at home and reflect, because the land of Biafra will be locked down. Nigerian military has released their terrorists in their uniform in Biafra land, and they are ready to kill just to blackmail IPOB. And then the point is that IPOB that we are blackmailing, it doesn't really matter. We will continue our fight till we are free. We will continue our peaceful struggle till we are free. We will continue our movement till we are free from Nigeria. So it doesn't matter what they do. They can do anything. So there is no need in them packing soldiers to kill all those kind of things. All is their way anyway. But I encourage every Biafran, when you are at your home, nobody will come to kill you. Nobody should come out. Ranger Football Club must desist and caution themselves. Their players must not show their face outside that day. Those who they are calling, or anybody who they invited, must not, because Peter by himself will be sitting at home. He himself cannot even come out that very day. Because if he come out, the same Nigerian military will kill him. They used to kill you. You know they are terrorists. They kill anybody, whether you're governor, they don't send it, they will kill you. They will kill him that day. So that is his own problem. So I want Rangers to take caution and stop all this nonsense. And people who are trying to do such in our land must desist. Because what they did to us, 1977, is something that we are not joking with. It is something that is very, very fresh in our mind. And they're using people like Umahi to come and talk nonsense. But Umahi will get his comeuppance at the right time. But what they did to us is something very fresh in our mind. And Nigeria must be very, very careful when we are approaching our military. Look at Gowon. Upon the way his people are being slaughtered, he has not shown any form of repentance, coming to release a biography and writing nonsense this time, thinking that he's going to deceive people. You know? So it's very, very funny. Old man like him, that should be having repentance in his mind, in his heart, and praying for forgiveness, because his people are not dying. But I pity his people that are allowing him. Because if his people want to be free from Fulani slaughter, and this their terrorism in their land, the plateau, in Jos, in all those places, they should go to Gowon and ask him serious question. Let old man not be putting people in destruction, because it will continue in their land. It's going to continue as long as, and maybe that is why Gowon is still alive, for them to be using him to come out and be talking, and his hand is shaking, his body is shaking, and he's still talking. These people, I don't know the kind of demon that created these people, but I want every Biafran to remain resolute. No matter what is going on, no matter what is raging around this struggle, our aim is to be free, and we are going to be free. It doesn't matter what they do with anybody. It doesn't matter what anybody say. It doesn't. As a Biafran, remain resolute, because you should have known that it is not going to be a walkover fight from the beginning. Because Biafra represents a lot of things for the development of Africa, and the interest of a lot of countries are in Biafra. People are looting. How do you imagine? Somebody was saying UAE have oil. Look at the way UAE is. And Nigeria have oil. Look at the way. What is the difference? The UAE, they are living good, but in Nigeria, absolute abject poverty and suffering and killing and terrorism. Why? People should ask themselves important question and do the right thing. Mazi Nnamdi, thank you very much for this opportunity. Black, remember to remain resolute. Take your directive from DOS. When we are in Biafra, you can do all your democracy. For now, we remain under the directive of DOS, of the Indigenous People of Biafra, headed by Mazi Nnamdi, because with discipline, we can defeat anything. That is what our leader taught us. With discipline, we can defeat any army in the world, and we excel at anything we do. What our leader teaches us is what we are taking. The lessons he gave us is what we are taking. Anything else apart from the lessons he gave us is not, we are not. It is that lesson that we will follow, and we will restore Biafra, and we will have a free, but that will be beneficial to the Biafrans, not beneficial to the West or to any other person. Thank you, Mazi Nnamdi. Elohim bless for me, and they will match next.
They will. Thank you. This is where we'll be ending today's program. After this broadcast, we will continue playing you some clips for your listening pleasure and understanding what happened. For your listening pleasure and understanding what happened.
Biafra, they fired the first shot to try and push people they kicked out of the Federation to bring them back in. So Nigeria, as a result, as a land, was soaked in blood. And is still being soaked in blood. And we need to take a pause then today to field some questions. So be brief in your questions, and I try and answer as many of them as possible, because the actual topic on the war itself, we're going to somehow introduce them, at a bleak rather than individual battlefield. So because there's a lot that went down during the war. But the major causes that led to it is what we discussed so far. So I'm grateful to anyone who's been listening, but it's not enough to listen. You have to share it with other people, and also, as Mazi Jonathan said, read up about it and confirm or confute anything I've been saying on the radio, and feel free to ask questions so that we can try and clarify any area. If I haven't got the answer, I will tell you bluntly, I do not have this answer. But if I do, I'll make it available on Radio Biafra so people would get access to it. But more importantly, we are trying to publish Bead magazine or some sort of booklet which will house most of this information so people have access to them going forward. And it's been hard work, and also it's possible to have a website on Bead where we're going to put all this information and then people can access them, which I feel is very, very important. Today's topic was supposed to be titled Nigeria Biafra War. I didn't call it Civil War. There was nothing civil about it. In fact, civil war is an oxymoronic term. You can't have a war that is civil. But that's another matter. So, but in the Nigerian Biafran War, that's what I call genocide Nigeriana. It's Nigeriana in the sense that is specifically the way Nigeria went about their own form of genocide, which is unique on planet Earth. It appears to be the longest running genocide because the people who have been exposed to genocide are still suffering genocide. So we need to tackle that particular topic on another day. So genocide Nigeriana should be something we should look into. But without further ado, let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be accepted in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my redeemer. So Mazi Jonathan, I'm happy to take some messages now. If you want me to define genocide, I can do that so everybody have an idea what we're talking about. It's not about just having a riot in the market and killing one or two people. This is a planned extermination of the people that is still going on in the full blaze of all those who are supposed to prevent it. There's a genocide convention preventing genocide. And yet, Biafrans seem to be afflicted by it, and it's been the longest running genocide so far. So I'm happy to take some questions, and we'll plow on. Thank you very much, Mazi Jonathan.
Before let me start. Before I open the lines, let me start by asking you, what is your take? Let me open, the statement by asking you, what is your take on, last few days, Wole Soyinka said something that struck me. He said that he was surprised that this Biafra agitation just started, can I say, late. That all these years, we nothing like Biafra until recently. Because to fairness to, he talked many other things anyway, about our leaders kidnapping, that is illegal. But fairness to Wole Soyinka, because we must say it as it is. Wole Soyinka was in jail during the Biafra War, I think so. And when he visited Biafra land and saw the massive genocide that is going on. He went back to Lagos and started talking about it. But he was jailed by Gowon until the war ended. I think I'm right. So, what is your take about although it's better to be late than never, but my question sometimes is this. Why did our people trust so much on one Nigeria going back and, now let us forget the past, which is not possible. We shouldn't forget the past and, embrace one Nigeria, and as if the war was fought haphazardly. We are waiting for pronouncement to be made so that we go back, because in the history of civil wars or cases like this, I never see a people that were killed like this and all of a sudden they stop and nothing was going on behind the scenes. Nothing, absolutely nothing. The people went back thinking that everything is okay. I never see it in any part of the world. If any person has seen it, he should speak. But I personally have been trying to inquire, research about other places. It never happened. In our own case, we just forget let's bury the hatchet. Now, one Nigeria, we continue having trust. So, it goes with the statements of Wole Soyinka. Why did it take so much time for this to start happening again? Knowing fully well that the war never ended. Abaribe said it in an interview, that we thought that the war ended in 1970. It's there on YouTube. His interview with Rudolph Okonkwo. He said, for them, the other people, he said the war never ended. We are mistaken that the war ended. So, why is it so? Is it out of ignorance or weakness of mentality or anything that made us to now we embrace everything? Anything they talk, we trust. Say, okay. We have no other inside plan, no secret plan, nothing. Mazi, please, if you can say something there before I start taking calls, please go on.
Thank you very much. There's a lot to talk on that. Why did we take so long? Well, that's a very good question. First of all, Wole Soyinka was one of these. He spoke his mind because he must have understood what happened to the Eastern Nigerian people before the war started. He was so keen to avoid a shooting war. So he went to the East to meet with the Ojukwu and so on. And after talking to him, when he returned back to Lagos, to West, Gowon arrested him because they didn't want him to speak the truth. And in fact, what did they say about the truth? They say truth is the first casualty of any war. So he was arrested, locked up, and there was international outcry, this famous writer, and he was only released a few months before the war ended. So he spent the best part of the war years in prison, where he wrote the man died. So on the one hand, we need to respect the man, because it wasn't, he didn't mince word. He told them, you cannot defeat Biafra. And he meant the spirit which guided Biafra, you cannot destroy it. And Ojukwu himself said, nothing can crush the spirit of a determined people. That's Ojukwu's quote. So you can beat them physically, you can shed their blood, but their spirit you cannot destroy. And the thing he's saying, they misunderstood that. You can win the battle, and you can even win the war. But Nigeria proceeded to lose the peace, which is where we need to look at what happened to our people. When the war was ending, people thought Nigeria should really consider how they need to protect those of the Biafran stock. And they anticipated that even if you defeated Biafra militarily, there will be a guerrilla warfare. Okay, they're convinced that this was going to happen. Biafrans would carry on fighting. So there's no point continuing the war because they have made the point. So everyone anticipated Biafrans would continue guerrilla fighting. I have my own views why that didn't happen. So what I also don't want to do is to get bogged down in this particular topic. Ojukwu himself, when asked in that famous interview after the war in September 1970 with Frederick Forsyth, he said the ball is now in the Nigerian court. Most people remember that quote. The ball is now in the Nigerian court. It's like you're playing tennis. Yeah, they have served it, and we played it. Now they served it. We send it back to them. It now depends on how they play it back. They play it back calmly, then that's fine. If they play it back viciously, then there's a chance that people reconsider this where we are. So it's just a warning shot. And that interview didn't go down so well with his host, the president of Ivory Coast, because Ojukwu had to be careful what he says, because he's taking an asylum there without aggrieving Nigeria so much. So, but Ojukwu was careful what he said, but the most he can say from his thought, his mind, is that now in the Nigerian court. Now, how did Nigeria go about to play a rotten shot back? They treated us not as no victor, no vanquish. Brothers at war. People tried to make it look such a civil war, misunderstanding among brothers, and so on and so forth. But the first thing they did, immediately Biafra surrendered, for 2 weeks, nobody was allowed to visit the enclave, what they call the enclave, where Biafrans were. No journalists. They just packed them in Lagos. If you're going to go to the east, you have to come to Lagos, and they camp journalists there, so nobody can be wandering around the Biafran land to see what was going on. So for 2 solid weeks, they weren't allowed into Biafra land. And so all this, they were doing, if you like, airbrushing, cleansing the land, so that nobody coming outside would see the actual massacres that was going on. A place called Njaba Bridge. Njaba was a town near Owerri where they went in there after the war was finished and massacred so many people. And no one can witness it. I, as a young lad who returned back to their village after the war, on my field where we played, my primary school where we played on the field, there was littered of bodies throughout the whole field. Young Biafran soldiers. I can tell they're young soldiers because you're not wearing Biafran uniform, some are also their own clothing or whatever. It's like people suddenly laying down flat across the actual field, literally wiped out. Okay, so if that was the case, and they were fighting the opposing Nigerians, why were they all lying in the field? So there was lots of massacre that went down immediately after the war. Those who are caught behind the Nigerian rapid advance. So there's a lot of pocket atrocities that occurred. The next thing to say is that while that was happening, Gowon said anyone who mentioned the word Biafra is doing a disservice to Nigeria. It just with airbrush and completely remove the word Biafra. So our people can only whisper it in their sitting room. They don't in their living room. They don't even know who is listening. And if they find you being a Biafran activist, you'll be killed. And there's nobody on the planet who's going to defend you. So why is it taking so long to come through? There's lots of reasons. They removed the name Bight of Biafra, which was at the beginning of the war, the coastal region. They changed it. So you don't hear, there's nowhere you can hear the word Biafra. When before Nnamdi Kanu came on, if you try to type Biafra, the Google was looking, but now just type BI and then Biafra comes up. So that means the name Biafra was forgotten. Okay, so now, why did it take 50 years? Because if you survive the war and you know the deprivations. People don't want to talk about it. The actual suffering that people went through. Not only did they suffer during the war, the food was a critical thing. When the war ended, in the airport where Biafrans received the airline, all the planes rather, that dropped in the food and all the supplies, rather than open it up, because Biafrans used it during night time, when the airplane carrying foodstuff, rice and stuff, so when it arrived, the Biafrans unpacked it so rapidly to allow the next plane to land. So it was a very efficiently run airfield, which was feeding, millions of Biafrans. Now, from the airport to, where it's Saint Tomé, just a little island down the coast, it was the shortest run, and the island was bulging with supplies for Biafrans. So Nigeria could have opened with the airport, or any other airport in the Biafra land then, Enugu, Calabar, Port Harcourt. All these places had airport, Warri even. So I'm not saying that Warri was part of Biafra, but it's close by. They could have opened all these airports and then allow all this food to be poured in day and night. Remember Biafra receiving these planes at night only. But now if you open it up and there's lots of food there, you can be flying them in and out without any disruption whatsoever. The Americans send this huge jumbo Hercules, to go to Lagos. The American Army had U.S. Air Force. Nigeria said, no, you can't have U.S. Air Force coming into our land. And they were arguing that Americans were bringing planes to help transfer all this food to the Biafran land. But the Americans said, it's an Air Force, it's a U.S. Air Force logo. We can't suddenly remove it. So they denied the Americans for getting involved in the airlift. So what I'm saying is to you as a child who remembered having to queue up after the war to get food supply. So they denied us food, which was actually in an island next door. So instead, they said all food which has been given or donated to Biafra has to go through Lagos. So they arrived in Apapa. Remember, River Niger, the bridge over was blown up during the war. So a ferry could only move across from Asaba to Onitsha, and about 4 of them in one day. They have to send jeep, Land Rovers to carry these and army trucks to then start going to, Biafra land. So there's a tactics used after the war to even starve more people. Those who survived the war, I can assure you, thousands and thousands died of this kwashiorkor, this dreaded, disease, because they had food, but they couldn't supply from Lagos because there was a stupid, belief that when you open up the airport in Udu, which the Nigerian army captured, somehow it's a symbol of Biafra. Therefore, we're not going to use it. Yeah? And the last thing they did was all the missionaries who helped to stay behind, who were there at the end of the war, who were making sure Biafra received the food supply. They rounded them all up and locked them up, put them in prison. They had to pay a fine, but they accused them of prolonging the war. So when they finished, then they sent them home and said they came in to work in Nigeria without a visa. This had been there for so many years before the war. So I can tell you that explaining all these, there was literally genocide before the war. This is genocide in Nigeria I'm talking about. There was genocide during the war. And even after the war, they made sure you carried on starving, killing more people than they were need to die who survived the war. So why did our people not immediately jump into bandwagon? Well, if they did, supposing one village, let's say Mba 20, Mba Nambi Simbe, they just call it Mba 20. On that particular place, some people rose up and killed 1 or 2 Nigerian soldiers. What do you think will happen to Mba 20? It will be decimated. It will be completely leveled, and there will be nobody outside to come and report it. It will be wiped out. Okay, so you have to understand the pressure that people were under, having survived the war, They have to somehow make ends meet. So, and there was no coordination of how we're going to do armed resistance, because the weapons flew in at the airport. Where are you going to bring the weapons in at this stage to do your fighting? You said, well, we could have buried some of them because there was weapons everywhere in Biafra land after the war. We could have collected those and hid them, and some people probably did, but you need to coordinate it. So Ojukwu was out, and he did warn that if people have to be careful not to lead our people into more massacres. So this business about, government in exile, Biafran government in exile, was not recognized. So you didn't have anyone outside who would speak for you. You didn't have anyone inside who would fight for you. So it's not surprising to me why it took so long. But what Biafrans knew to the war, they wrote on their walls, and everywhere you care to see, Agaracha must return. Agaracha must come back. Because they said that Ojukwu has gone on a journey, and they were so determined that he must come home. So that was the only hope they had. The Agaracha must return. And that's a coded message that until Ojukwu comes, we are still outside. So I can carry on talking to you about all these reasons. They not only disenfranchised us, they didn't want us to be part of Nigeria. Imagine you return back to Lagos and you are, say, lecturer grade, whatever. The people who you are above before the war are now above you. And imagine you trying to get back to your original post. Well, it's occupied now, so you have to suffer that indignity. If you try to open a shop, which they're now in a hurry to destroy and vandalize, you have one little hut. You bring your brother, you squat on that hut, that shed, to sell your wear. He sleeps in the morning, you sleep in the day. You're sharing one hut until you begin to expand. The class of 66 to 70 were extraordinary human beings, and they were really they wanted to destroy them spiritually, economically, and physically, but they survived. So the fact that it's taking so long for Biafra to resurface is because of Nigerian remaining, if they're having their own agenda, to continue to persecute them. Because no sooner after 1980, they started killing people again. So this is what triggered the need to return back to looking again why Biafrans are being killed. So I think I'm going to not have the conversation. So those are some of the reasons I personally think might have attributed to why it took a long time for this agitation and the restoration struggle to resurface. And the last thing to mention is that the Biafrans have to know who to trust to lead them in this sort of restoration fight. And until Nnamdi Kanu surfaced, we didn't really have anyone we could fully trust, and so on. We did start with Wazirike, but then he let us down. Now Nnamdi Kanu has known all about it, so that's why we are where we are today, because it's taken a long time. Thank you very much for that.
There were Mazi. Honestly speaking, there's something you said now. You say it took a long time for Biafrans to trust somebody. For me, that word they say, it is not totally true, but anyhow. That is the way I put it. That's why it's not easy for Biafrans to trust a leader. You need to prove it. And that is what Mazi Nnamdi Kanu has done, or what he did. So, our lines are now opened. Our direct line, as usual, is +1 213 328 6224. I repeat, +1 213 328 6224. Our WhatsApp and Signal line is +61 405 142 547. I repeat, +61 405 142 547. Once you call, please make sure to limit your questions to few minutes, maximum 2 minutes, so that we could take as much calls as possible, because people are people are lining up to call to ask mostly questions. Now I have a caller that has been there, a caller on direct line. Caller on direct line, please, can you hear me? Start by giving us your name, where you're calling from, and then your questions, if you may. Can you hear me?
Thank you, Dr. Jonathan. Thank you, our honorable guest lecturer, Dr. Ukachi Lloyd. My name remains Chukuma Biafra. God knows Biafra from the beginning. Let me interpret it in English. Please permit me. I have 4 messages before I have a question. 4 messages to 4 people that were big players in the genocide visited on Biafra. And my question will center around Aburi Accord. It's just one question. My first message is to General Yakubu Gowon. In one of the last videos that he made after the war, he said, and I quote, that he never knew that Ojukwu took Aburi conference serious. That was the head of state, in which involved killing of Biafra. He said he never knew Ojukwu took it serious. So in other words, he didn't take it serious. He's listening, but I tell him one thing, the grave will reward him. The second message is to Obasanjo. To Obasanjo today, this week, we are mourning the Biafran soldiers who were returning from Calabar, whom you ordered their summary execution. We are also mourning the Udi massacre, where you went to Biafra land in Udi and leveled a whole community. They are 50 years, 100 years, I don't think they are going to recover from it. That is for you. And for Babangida, you are on the wheelchair. The grave will pay you and will reward you and Obasanjo. Babangida had the longest transition period in history of that country called Nigeria. But he blew it up when he got 2-party system that would have stabilized that British business center. But he was advised, so he blew it up and threw Abiola away. And Nigeria started all over again. Today they have more than 100 political parties. Babangida, under you, Delegiwa was murdered. Just like Bola Ige was murdered under Obasanjo. The grave will reward you. Finally, on the kidnapper from Daura, the impostor, the pedophile, Buhari, this is a message for you. You were the best the North could offer. And we saw you, and you didn't disappoint yourself as a kidnapper of first generation. Those are my messages. My question now is, Aburi was a peace pathway to Nigerian crisis, and it failed. Was it a failure of the whole nation of Nigeria acting on ignorance or bankruptcy of Gowon leadership, or for the reason as a result of inferiority complex of Nigerians to turn Downing Street that has continued to meddle and manipulate Nigerian pathway to peace? Thank you. That is my question.
There, Mazi. I think you had him.
For all those comments, and I respect all you've said and the depth of feeling which you had. The Aburi, going straight to your question, was it an inferiority complex? Okay. They say that Ojukwu, they accuse Ojukwu, well, they always find a reason to accuse somebody. They accuse Ojukwu of having what they call compulsive logic. Compulsive logic is that, look, this is A and this is B. If you put A and B together, you get a C. Okay? So let me unpack that. He had compulsive logic, and he came to Aburi to literally say to the rest of his colleagues, you were all there. My people are massacred. Yeah? Okay? and none of you did anything to stop it. How do you expect us now to live together? They accused him. Hassan said, if you want to stay out, you stay out. If you want to come in, you come in. If you listen to the transcripts of the Abuja court, he went there to explain to them that he wasn't pleased with them at all. They said, they will say, go on, we're talking about the Supreme Commander. Say, what Supreme who? Who's Supreme Commander? Go on. Since when? The Supreme Commander we know is Agi Ironsi and is missing. How can Gowon be the Supreme Commander? They didn't like that. So he then said that, so that is why he has his agenda. He brought the agenda which they discussed in Abuja. So they're saying if he was intellectual inferiority complex or whatever. Sure, he went to Oxford, but he used, one of the first few leaders I've seen who used this knowledge to defend his people without having to kill anybody in the conference table. Remember, they were all co-chairmen and all this conferee, all the people who came for that conference, they are all co-chairmen. They weren't somebody who's ahead the other. So the inferiority complex is their own portion. But Ojukwu did not go there to have inferiority complex. He go there to discuss what was happening to his people. A minimum of 30,000 have been slaughtered. Thousands more were maimed, injured, eye gouged out, properties abandoned, everything. And you think we're going there to have picnic. Okay? So they must have misunderstood the seriousness of the situation. Number one, you killed all the Biafran soldiers in the army. You blew a bugle, everybody comes out for a parade. You point at Iba, you stabbed and killed them. Yeah? So, outside the eastern region, if you're in the army, you're not safe. So now how is it that you're the commander, the supreme commander of the Nigerian army? So which army are we talking about? Is it the army of the northerners or the army that is left, or what is left of the east? So you could say, look, the best way, because you can't expect an Igbo officer or soldier to be in the same camp, the same canteen, in the same trench as a northern soldier. Because this is January. They were being killed from July 29th until October. Non-stop killing. So you're not safe. You now want me to come back and we're now all one country, one people, let's clap hands and go on, you're the commander, general, or whatever you want to call yourself. So he said to them, the best way forward is that if I'm from the east, I stay in the east, in my own part of the world, and be a soldier in the east, controlling an area called area command, which I'm responsible for. So that way, I don't have to come to the north and get killed, or go to the west and get killed. That makes sense. That's compulsive logic. The second one was, so if you sort out the army, who is then going to be in charge of the country? Oh, Gowon says he's the supreme commander. No, sir. Igbo or the Ojukwu has to have a say and input on what happens to his people from now on. So therefore, we're going to have a supreme military council. Gowon is a member. In fact, he was asked to be the chairman of that Supreme Military Council. So Ojukwu will be a member, Ejo will be another, Adebayo will be another, and then Hassan will be another. The four people from the four regions. They need to have a say whatever policy you're going to impose on the country. And Gowon, you're going to be the chairman. Oh, no. I can't be the tutelar head. I can't just rubber stamp whatever you guys decided. No, it's not what they decided. What they decided was that if you have any situation, you need to bring it to the table and we discuss it. You've got to show it to all the regions, and you're going to have their concurrence and the agreement. Otherwise, you impose your will on one region. And that is what caused the war, because they reneged on this important decision. So that Gowon says, from now on, the East are going to declare a state of emergency. I only take myself, the Northern, the Western, and so on. If they all agree, then Ojukwu, you have to lump and take it. Okay, so Ojukwu said, no, this is not going to work. And Aburi will stand. So it's not a case of inferiority complex. It's the deliberate ploy to derail what would have worked. All right. So the next thing about Aburi, about complex, inferiority complex, why is it that you cannot compensate those members who are working for the federal government? They're in the rail, telephone, whatever, the civil servants, for example. They haven't been paid since you chased them out of the north. How do you expect them to feed their family, take their children to school, and so on and so forth? That was decided that you should have a finance team look into how you're going to compensate them. If they found another job in the East, fine, you don't need to pay them. But if they haven't, you should pay them money. This was agreed. And then they turn around and say, oh, finance committee, we're no longer going to meet and talk about it. So you understand? So it's not a case of inferiority complex, it's a case of deliberate, obfuscation of what happened, what was discussed in Aburi. So much so is that, as Ojukwu said, it's as though when they turn everything down, it's as though Gowon didn't turn up at the Aburi, because the minutes are different from what he's saying that was discussed. And that was why Ojukwu, that's why they may have misunderstood the seriousness of Aburi Accord, and they turned it into discord. And that's why Nigeria has not recovered since then. I don't know, my brother, if I've answered your question. I'm going to keep it short. So let's leave it as that for the time being. Thank you very much.
There were Mazi. Caller on, WhatsApp. Welcome to the program. Can you hear me? Caller on WhatsApp, please.
Yes, I can hear you very clear, Mazi.
There were Mazi. Please go on.
Thank you very much. I greet you, Mazi Kati. This is Mazi Aganeku, calling from Italy. My question is, first of all, I want to do an announcement because I am working as a coordinator of Milano. Our 30th May, we hold in Milano, Italy this year. We want all IPOB that resided in Italy, all Biafrans, all Igbo, all Biafra, Eastern region, together in Milano on the 30th May, Milano Central train station, at the Apple side. That is where we'll gather to do our 30th May. After we'll go to our hall, where we will sit down and talk. I want IPOB, all IPOB to volunteer themselves to come that day to support what we are doing, because our commemoration is every year. And this is the head of what we are doing, because we are remembering our people that have been killed since the time immemorial. Because slave trade killed our people. We never give them benefiting burial. Missionary kills our people, we never give them benefiting burials. Colonization kills so many of our people. Commercialization kills so many of our people. We have to give them benefiting burial. And this benefiting burial, we need support from everybody. Because we will go to the whole world and we will use our palm leaf to go and make sure that we take their spirit back home. We need to do it. We need every IPUB, every Biafrans, all those our brothers and sisters that scattered all over the world, like Jamaica, Haiti. We need our people up there to stand up to support what we are doing, because what we are doing is not ordinary. We want to make sure that we control our responsibilities. Nobody will help us. We know it from the time immemorial that nobody will help us. That's why we are telling our people that you don't need to follow anybody. We continue saying it. So, I thank you, Mazi. I thank you, Mazokachi. And my question is, why we went to Aburi, first of all? Because for me, that Aburi, I don't know. Because it's not in the same value system with these people that is in our land today. I don't know why we go to Aburi. You understand? Because that Aburi is what caused all those problems. Because had it been we stand on our feet, send these people away, they will go. I believe we go, they didn't come up, they didn't stand, because had they been they stand later today, they could have come up and say, yes, these people is like this. But where do you see them? So all this protocol we're going today is like we're going back to where we get wound more. So as we know what we are doing, we need to go buckle up. We need to buckle up. We know where we are going. We know where we are going. They disorganized our government system, the original system. Because if there is no original, fake can never be existed. So all those ones that is in our land is fake to us. And that is when enemy. Because the enemy does not exist. And if Biafrans are doing their things, going on every day we do our things, nobody will be enemy. But when foreigner enter our land, we started getting enemy. So, we need to buckle well. Ohamadike has finished up what he comes to do. He has finished up. Anything happens to him, we know the people who hold responsible. We know them. And our land, they know already, they are running away from our land. None of them build anything in our land. Only what they are doing in our land is to suck us dry. We know them. So, we are telling all IPOP to buckle up. If you stand well, that know what we are doing. We know that Ogiso must restore back. Ogiso must restore back. Then, after Ogiso restore back, Ogiso will now tell us who is Idu? Who is Idu? Because Idu Noba is more story than
Mazi, I think you have asked your question.
So that people understand what we are doing. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Mazi Okachi, I think you heard what he said. Although,
thank you.
Go on, please.
Okay. For brevity, able coordinated Italy, Dewo, thank you for all your hard work and continue encouraging our brothers in Italy. And you've all heard what he said, so supporting the 30th of May. Why we went to Aburi at all? Very important question. Remember, Ojukwu was under such pressure to declare Biafra immediately when all this killing started. And this famous interview I keep referring to, September 1970, he said if he knew what he knows now at the time of the interview, he would have declared Biafra. So my brother, you're probably right. He would have declared Biafra then. But the class 67 or 66 or 70, they know who they're up against. It's not just in Nigeria, it's what the world will say, what the United Nations will say, what everybody will say. And also, jaw is better than war, Winston Churchill once said. It's best to talk and avoid war at all costs than to rush head on and start fighting. Because once you declare this area is Biafra, they will invade you. And for security's sake, we didn't have any weapons to defend ourselves. When Ojukwu was being encouraged to defend Biafra, like my brothers and sisters, look, we don't have any weapons. Okay? Everything is in the north. Ammunition factory in the north. Kaduna, where you train a Nigerian army in the north, artillery. Everything was stationed in the north because the British know that whoever controls the army controls the country. So we're outplayed. Our people say, Malay, army. Malay. In other words, they discourage our people from joining the army. Because it's not a job for somebody who is educated or who wants to get on in life. The Yorubas is even worse. About 800 of them were in the army. Because why would a Yoruba person live in Lagos, Ibadan, and so on, where they have free education? You go and join the army. So the army was only inhabited by those majority in the north. And they were denied Western education, so that when they send a bunch of people from the north to go to Canada to be trained as officers, the Canadians send them back and say, you guys need to go and do some more reading, you're not ready. So we had the Eastern people, when they joined the army, they were able to progress to the officers' cadre. So the issue, therefore, wasn't what should we do about Abu, because we have just got 200 officers wiped out. So the people who attacked us knew what they were doing. You can't go to war when in your own country you have 200 officers missing. Those who are your best trained warriors are no longer available to fight and defend the civilians and without any weapons. Little wonder how we survived in the first place. So why Abu was to buy time, I think, to make sure we've done everything humanly possible to prevent a war, because we are going to lose out. Once the war starts, it wasn't a case of winning the war, it was a case of preventing how many lives are going to be lost. So Juku said, the way you measure our success in the war is how many lives we saved at the end. Okay? It was more resisting the aggression, which Britain made sure these guys are armed to the teeth. Do you know how Nigerian military advanced? They used armored vehicles in front. After periodic shelling, they saturate the area they're going to invade with artillery from long range. It's not you Abuba warriors. You grab your knife and whatever and go to forest and start chopping people's head off. It's not the type of war. It was a war where at a long distance, 10 miles away, and artillery come and land on your head. You haven't the foggiest clue how to prepare it. And these people, they're traders, they're schools, but they're eager to defend themselves. So we did not have the weapons to fight this war. And when it did start, it was because of our scientists that were able to manufacture some weapons that actually allowed the war to even last for months before we got our bearings. So, my brother, there's a lot to discuss about Abu, but Abu was an attempt to prevent further slaughtering of our people and also make an environment, create an area of command where we'll be looked after. But they turned it out. The final legacy about Abu is that if ever we go to another discussion into how we're going to cohabit or live together or have a relationship, I recommend, this is my own personal feeling, we need to make sure UN, AU, UK, US, RU, BRICS, all these people throughout the whole world must have a copy, must be involved in the decision making that the agreement we made is signed and sealed in front of them. So nobody on this planet will say, we disagree with what we discussed and so on and so forth, because we don't have witnesses. Because even though Abu was recorded, we didn't have the clout to publish it to the whole planet and say this is what was discussed, and Britain made sure they suppressed this important fact. So when we fought, our people fought because they knew their causes was right, and that is why we lasted so long. And as I said, it's not over until it's over. They wanted to wipe you out because they were still alive. It means there's hope still. Thank you very much.
There were Mazi. There were caller on WhatsApp. I don't know whether my signal. Please, people can also be calling on signal. I don't know. There is no problem with my signal as long as I can see. Caller on WhatsApp, please go on. You are welcome to the program. Can you hear me? Go on to your question. Oh, Mazi.
Okay, Mazi Lawrence Okashi, also good evening. I want to appreciate you.
Mazi Justice Okachi. Justice. There we go.
Okay. I'm Mazi Kese. So I may use it to our language.
Gani.
Mazi. Imara, I may be those two contribution and then we'll some questions I need the age. Number, I'm not no mistake our eternal leader man. I'm not no mistake. Because Mbehagabul ya also another journalist. Because of Iemre Abu ya me na enwonye no oluwa wo na enwe journalist. Because of even what they were Abu Jiga America na Ghana was planned. They use Ghana as a planned place. Because in the hammer, invite na the ship, according to the story, according to the history, our brothers to reject. Maybe have an alternative to Ghana. Because I want to have an alternative to Ghana. After the thing, the African Union, grand plan before that meeting. All mistake our leader, because I say Mbandozo Mbandozo brand that thing. They go on again now we discuss on that. Then both of that, we hit whatever. Don't take you, Mayor. Oh, another thing. Another thing was on Choico. The way to kill Nigeria, the way to systemize Nigeria, honorable Nigeria, America, Nigeria fellow. In that time, make a major Nigeria. I didn't tell you, every sick, after City Grass School, one of the best in Africa. Why is there the way to structure Nigeria? You watch our Mazi Professor Kuroka. Also, every military district was instituted in North. Both the academy, every weapon was situated in North. But Zeke, as a wise man or Ogra school, how do you know what are these things? Still, one Nigeria, not our problem, our leaders. Can you use Zeke as an example of what is happening? Our elders now. Open the same thing Zeke like hacker. Okay, online, when they put our leader, our eternal leader, and people may have no difficult cause of war. An evil man, an elder, and this okay, now I want matter. I want him, I am in barrel of the war. But then elder today. And he was just in him last 2 weeks ago. Now, let Ohanese to Gagayo Biko. No Hanesa Gayo Biko. Some of them will 8 years. Some of them will 90 years. Or how much this history, our alcohol here, or how much the history. Because of all these people, problem I want. And then our leader, our agent, among our agents, some of our agents in Nigeria, people be all over our home, or people be our home now, Biafra war, our good history. Even when you know our elite, people can our generation people how to be a high grass school. I am when school where elite. In a lane down, you're going to do Mubima. It's shown under grass school. Can go just to Gamaji, Chop, grass school. Another thing was on Toyiko. About this story, that's about this history. History. I'm a research. Now, you do Biafra, I didn't see open online, on my own research. Memory cool on that Wikipedia, on the start on the headline. I say, then we have some Igbo cool. But even at the contest, even at the history. Now, Gani, at the contest, exactly here, our professor for here. It's really but because of everyone then I won't be able. Like when then I'm on a leave, when I'm on outside Igbo land. After this thing, Haga get checking me. Wikipedia. Una, la Igbo crew, Haga, Igbo crew. Everyone does now with the one that's non-Igbo cause this problem, non-Igbo cause. All these our historians, all these our professors in the league, we have can I change this because I won't do so that I got Akukai. No so for Akukai. And when we have some things say, now move through. And the this our generation, and these people now elite in Igbo land. Can you change history? Can you change this thing online? Even online, Lord, had against Igbo people. And also, my last thing come happen also. This is now. Eventually, a lot of cash and meditate everybody. Because of this history, I know after this history, I was so bad. I cried every mapper. and then like a bigger. But when they cry, this is the I wrote to everybody in Biafra land.
The war watching it. Mazi, Dr. Okachi, before you go, just 1 second. There is one thing I want to add. The question he asked about our elite. I said it, I used to say it. Leadership is not only a budget chalk or a school. No. Common sense they involved. Their ability, to have sound judgment. It's not easy to have a sound judgment, be analytical about what will happen maybe in the next 10, 20, 50 years. Using it now, you start making policies. It's not easy to have somebody like that. Because what I see in our land, we have people that claim they go to school. They are professionals in their field, honestly speaking. But without sound judgment. Because if Azikiwe, I continue saying it, if Nnamdi Azikiwe had a very sound judgment, he would understand that, look, a foreigner cannot come and create a country and for you to progress in a setting like Nigeria. It's impossible. Of course, some people, what is his name, warned him. There are people that warned him that so, and he said, no, don't worry, because he want to be in control of the good thing, that big Nigeria. Now, can they go there? Let the Europeans, let Britain come out. We know how to. We know how to manipulate them now. Don't worry. Trust me now. Nothing make Onyibo. That is small vision. That is small myopism. Don't worry. So that thing we always neglect. But that thing we neglect, we call mundane, is what haunts us in future. Mazi, please, come in, please, go on, Mazi.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Leadership, as you said, is part of our problem, and they keep saying it's very easy. But it's the context in which it's said. In the context that when the English got there, or the Europeans got there, they saw a village. And when there's an issue, they sound their gong, and everybody comes out and asks you who invited us to this meeting. Somebody said Queen Victoria wants us to pay tax. Then they will ask, who's Queen Victoria? Please go on. And if you can't explain it, then they will not listen. So the leader are meant to be stubborn. It's not that. But in the other part of the country, Queen Victoria said, you want to collect tax. Emir said, tax everybody, and they obey. So you have a disparity between how we responded to authority. If there's a need for us, the village, to send somebody to represent them, that person is voted for on the ground that they are sending somebody to represent the whole village. And when that event finishes, that person just goes and sits down. We didn't have warrant chiefs because he was imposed on us. We didn't have anybody who was imposed on us. When you finish whatever you're representing us for, that sits there. So it's a group of people whose leadership is fractionated. There are very little, if you like, villages. You can't find somebody ruling 10 villages because it doesn't belong to our villages. So our system is very unique, and it was difficult for the Europeans to manage because they wanted, who's the head man? Who do we talk to? Who's the boss man here? That's how they act. But the Igbo was different. We are fractionated in the way we deal with that. Every village is autonomous. So we shouldn't knock that system. But when we encountered modernity, we had leaders like Azikiwe, and he was way ahead of everybody else because he was instructed at Boarding Powell College that in order to assist the development of Africans, you have to be seriously educated. There's no way around that. That's why Nnamdi Kanu is doing a great job for us, because you can't come and have half-heartedly in your knowledge at the problem. You've got to be rounded. You've got to understand how the system works. So, but when we become that famous, and someone like Mboni GK said, Zeke, the guy, a bigger, there's no road there. So he may disagree with him and say that it becomes an issue. But you are all right. How is it that our leader, who's supposed to be representing this particular corner of the country, we see every single major installations put in the north, and you keep quiet? Yeah, you get independence and then you reconfigure it? No, it's too late. Not only that, the northerners are being pampered by the British, and British are favoring them. Everything goes to them. And then you're not challenging that decision. That is where mistake number one, or really important mistakes, occurred. Because they thought they were building a country. But the other people were thinking, yeah, the country of building is an estate of our grandfather, our great-grandfather. So that was the mistake, they call the mistake of 1914, where they amalgamated North and South. They were supposed to be different countries. So field engineering was part and parcel of it. So let me park that somewhere and answer our brother Joseph, who obviously has thought seriously about their bully. He mentioned that there's a need we did not get the journalists to actually tell us how their bully went. Well, there were journalists, in the sense that the journalists said there was the Abu Akko was conducting a cordial environment. It was done in Ghana, and they decided, they quite rightly pointed out, Ojukwu said, look, we want our brother in Africa, the OAU is called then, not AU, Universal African Unity, should have a copy of this transcript of what we're discussing. So the rest of the police say, no, this is a Nigeria, this is a brother's matter, this is Nigeria. We don't want anybody to, come and tell us how to manage our country. And to be fair to them, they arrived at some serious discussion. Some of it was heated, and they came to the conclusion of how this country should be put together. And journalists were, Ojukwu had his own secretary. They all had their own secretary. They were able to say exactly what went wrong, I think. Part of what went wrong is that Ankara, who was the Ghanaian general, who was their chairman, who was actually encouraging them to get together and do all this, I believe that he should have stepped in when Gowon was messing about. He should have said, raised the flag and said, look, you guys decided such and such and such and such. Gowon, why on earth are you changing, the minutes of the meeting? Yeah, because you know how strongly the East have been hurt. Yeah, he should have spoken up. He should have speaking, called it for what it is. You came to Ghana, you had this conference, and everybody was happy when you're going home. I personally, Ankara took both Ojukwu and Gowon, one on either side where he was sat in the car, the back seat, one on either side, and they said a short prayer and said yes, and so on. But then it started unraveling. Why didn't he intervene and say, look, Gowon, look, Ojukwu, I don't want you guys to start killing each other. Right? This is what he decided. If you want more time, come back to Ghana, then discuss it further. He didn't do that. And I don't know why. There was one thing I need to raise. The second one is that Nigeria is set up, as Brother Joseph said, as failure engineering. Failure engineering, you design something that is going to fail. Okay? That's why they cited the military in the north and everything in the north. So when they appears that what was his name? Aguirre has taken over the mantle of leadership. So, it's not how we plan Nigeria. Unity. No. That's not unity decree. No, it's not how we plan. We want the north to be separate from the south, so that we can carry manipulating them and getting them to be the same pair of hands, which we really wanted, so they can look after our interests. That is how Nigeria was designed. So anybody who tried to unite it, Igbo coup. Because it will backfire. If it was an Igbo coup, then the country is going to suddenly move forward. But we all know it's not an Igbo coup, but it was the BBC first labeled an Igbo coup. Everybody else, you have evidence saying that we're getting rid of corruption. Country nepotism is dead. University students, a bad university, they're all celebrating. And then suddenly, a bombshell drops, is an Igbo coup, and there's no evidence. So, we need to understand that the failure engineering wasn't built, and Britain wasn't going to let go in a hurry. So, what mistakes then? Did they cite it in Ghana? Was that the mistake? I don't think so, because Ojukwu was invited to come to the British warship parked outside the shores of Nigeria. And the Jaja story, if you remember Jaja Kobo, he was asked to come to the boat to discuss. And when they got there, they arrested him and taken him to the West Indies. So Ojukwu wasn't about to make the same mistake because he knows his history. So Ojukwu didn't go to the British warship to have this conference. They wanted neutral ground, which is Ghana, so the British can't come in and tell the brothers what they're supposed to do and manage their country. So that is the thing I want Brother Joseph to know. It wasn't the mistake going to Ghana. It could have been worse if they discussed it in the British, if you like, war vessel, which may be manipulated to favor Nigeria, but they spoke their mind in Ghana. So I think the site was okay in that sense. Regarding the apology which the Ohanese people were rushing to go and do, when those who killed us should be apologizing to us, they are rushing to go and do it. It's not because they don't know the history. They know the history more than you and I. What we must understand is that those of us who have been given the opportunity to read about this history, that is, particularly those outside who have access to 24/7 electricity, we should not sit on our laurels. We should pick up the books, examine the facts, go to the library, read the newspapers, find out what happened to our people. Because those on the other side are not going to tell you. You need to find out. And when you find out, then you discuss it. So when you have a meeting, your town hall meetings, there should be a passage. There should be an opportunity to raise the history. There should be a historian in each of the Igbo communities to explain to your generations what happened to our people. So not just, walking into, blindly, what do you call it? Walking blindly into another trap. We need to understand what has happened to us so we can avoid a repetition. So that's why BEAD, B-E-A-D, Biafra Educational Awareness Dissemination, has to take off and make sure we have accurate information, not the one you made up, not propaganda, facts of what happened to our people. And that needs to be disseminated so everybody gets a chance to understand the truth, particularly in the next generation. So nobody's going to tell them it's an Igbo coup. The Igbo people are invaders and all that nonsense. We've got to have the facts available for a generation currently and the one to come. I also must say, our generation, the 66 to 70 generation, when you go through what they've gone through, I do blame them because they should have an obligation to explain to their families and to their children what happened to them, and not come out of their shells and say, this is what I went through, so that their children will not make the same mistake. You have to do it. You don't keep it to yourself. And finally, if BEAD is allowed, they should have memorial for every village, every town, of what happened to us during the war. Then this nonsense about, I'm going to go and apologize will stop. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Mazi. And one thing I want to add also, Ankara, we should also know historically that he overthrew Kwame Nkrumah. And for me, I believe also that he is a British or a Western agent. So anything can or could have happened. Caller on signal, you have been here for 16 minutes, if I'm not wrong. Can you hear me? Caller on signal. Caller on signal. There we go. Please go on. Ganiru.
Ukachi Professor Ukachi Ndewo Ukukabia ma dobere weteta
Mazi, I don't know the connectivity.
If I young story that Biafrans never know. Mazi Jonathan, sorry, am I coming clear?
Go on.
No, you're not. You are not. Speaking to that device clearly, so we can understand what you're saying, then I can answer you. Please.
All right. I thank you, and I thank all Biafrans for the wonderful history you are giving us. I never know that these such things happen to us. Yes, I hear it, I see it in media, and I believe what you are saying. And so all these things happen to us, and our elders that are claiming that they are one Nigeria.
Mazi, why is your output, Mazi, please, your output is not steady. First of all, there's a squeaky noise.
Yeah, I don't know.
Also, I don't know. Speak to the telephone direct, please. Can you hear me? No, I think he's gone. Caller on WhatsApp, please go on. Can you hear me? Caller on WhatsApp.
I can hear you, Professor Jonathan.
Mazi, there were.
Thank you for taking my call. Just as you're speaking to a brother who's a scavenger. I'm calling from Africa Sud, South Africa. I greet my leader. Can you hear me well?
Go on, yes, go on.
I greet my leader, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, a prisoner of conscience, who set up this Radio Biafra, a citadel of knowledge and spirituality to educate us, and that is what you, Professor Jonathan, is doing. Thank you. I greet your guest in the studio, Dr. Lloyd Okachi. I greet you, my brother. I greet you for what you are doing for Biafrans. Dr. Lloyd Okachi is from your education to Radio Biafra when you are being hosted by in Johannesburg here. So I learned from you that the first shot was fired in Gatem. And Gatem is in Ogogo province of Biafra land. That means that it's not a Jew who caused the war. It doesn't bring the war to kill us. And that is what I learned from you. Thank you, and I'm your fan. I keep on listening to you. Professor Okashi, Dr. Okashi, sorry. What I wanted to ask is, I wanted to hear from you exactly. Is it really the Biafrans who... is it fair for me to say that Biafrans love even the Nigeria than the Northerners love Nigeria? It's like Biafrans love Nigeria more than the Northerners. The reason why I'm saying it, I have my reason. Before even the war said that this Nigeria is his father's state. And I think he was there. Because all the Biafrans were there, they didn't counter it. I think you said that Biafrans will always be a sacrificial lamb for the Sudanese. And that is to compensate them for what they did. That is even before the war. This thing happened before the war. And the Northerners themselves, before the war, they said they don't want to be Nigeria. That they wanted their own separate state. They don't believe in Nigeria. It's the Biafrans. All the coup that wanted to destroy Nigeria is the Biafrans who stop it, even in the north and even in the south. So, Dr. you know, I used to say that to me, I used to see these people as prison waters. I don't know, I call them prison waters. I don't call them leaders. Because if you look at any time that Nigeria wanted to crumple, it's a little man who will come to the middle and put himself on the line. If you check the last election, they even made it that the Northerners, the Fulanis, will be the president and the other one following, which is the Yorubas, which means Igbo are not even supposed to. Then Igbo smuggle themselves through Labour and put the OP in the middle, just to suffer what we are fighting for. Is it safe to say, man, so what are we going to do to these ones who will call our elders, who keep on punishing us? Mazi Nnamdi Kanu came up and said, we know how to do these people, we know how to handle them. Then the elders, the people who say that their elders are called prison warders, come and discuss it. They don't want to hear from our leader. They went ahead to prescribe us as a terrorist. They are the one teaching them English, telling them what to say. Doctor, please, can you help us? What do we do to these our elders for them to hear our pain? Somebody who is about 10 years to go, but he is now telling us that we are not seeing anything. Yes, it's safe to say that these people are afraid. What makes them to be afraid to the death? Can you help us, doctor, to explain to them and beg them and tell us what we should do with these our elders? Do we still send them to exile at this age, at this old age? What do we do again for them to know? The people that said they don't want to be in Nigeria, they don't believe in Nigeria, they wanted to go for a long time, and the Biafrans are still teaching themselves to them. They don't want to go. One way the young ones have seen what is happening to us, we are dying. In Mediterranean Sea, we are down everywhere to know if we can survive. The old ones say we must remain. That they have seen what you have not seen. Please, I'm going to step here. Dr. Please don't speak as an elder here. True. Don't speak and tell us what should we do to this elder. I know you are an elder. You have sympathy on the elders. But this is getting out of hand to us. Thank you for taking my call. That's why I love you. I give members and my call. Bye.
There, Mazi. Doctor, it's over to you. Dr. Kaji.
Brother Scavenger, thank you for your comments. Yes, indeed, Gakem was the first opening shot in the war on the 6th of July 1967, 6767. Nigerians opened up with a barrage of artillery and then sent their infantry across what they call the police action. If that was a police action, then I don't know what a military action is. So the two-pronged attack. The Biafrans resisted that invasion, and that's why we are here today. They were able to withstand it. So you can read up on the actual battlefield with Alexander Madiego, who died last year, and his account of the actual war front, what happened. So you're right, Gakem was where everything started. Now, regarding our elders, or regarding the Fulanese or the Northerners, their party, interestingly, is Northern People's Congress. They don't really believe in that you are Nigerian, so because for them it's the North first, Northern Nigeria first, before anybody else. A bit of apartheid, since you're in South Africa, you have the history of apartheid. So everyone who comes to the northern part of Nigeria was regarded as a foreigner. They rather employ an expat first before they give the job to an Igbo person. So expat first, then another Nigerian before an Igbo person is given the job. And then the derogatory remark that if you employ Igbo and put them in the work camp, they're going to emerge as the head man of that head camp. I got annoyed with that statement. We don't want to be the head man of the camp. We want to own the camp. So that's why they don't like us. Why would you want to be the head man of the labor camp when you can own the camp itself? Anyway, put that aside. Nigeria is in the guardian cage. Lugard is Lord Lugard who joined North and South. for economic convenience, because Britain couldn't afford to administer the North as they wanted, but they wanted the money from the South to administer the North, to make it economically viable. So you have a cage which Nnamdi Kanu calls a zoo. Yeah, so the zookeepers are the ones in trust to keep it as a zoo. But the Guardian cage you and I find as Nigeria, and you're now calling the elders as the zookeepers. Well, actually, they are not zookeepers, they're the assistant zookeepers. The zookeepers are up in the north. They have oil wells, they run the country, and they have their followers outside the country. They know exactly how to keep everybody down. So your elders, who you're constantly hammering, are actually not the zookeepers. They are, perhaps I'll label them assistant to the assistant zookeepers. Yeah? So they're nowhere near a seat of power. But we now need to ask them, well, we can only change that mindset if the youth, since we are blaming the elders, the youth and those who are not elders need to really do what Nnamdi Kanu did. You need to go out there and research and find out as much as you can about what happened to our people. You need to really, really understand your history. So when an elder said to you, oh, you wouldn't understand. What I see sitting down, you will not see standing on an uluku tree. You say, sorry, man. Or sorry, sir. What you're saying sitting down is wrong, because our people are being killed. So you need to bring up the alternative to those phrases, what an elder will see sitting down. It's not you're disrespecting them, but it's supposed to be they forgot most of the facts. So you have to hit them with information and say, this is what happened. They kicked us at Gakem. So if you come and tell me that we started the war, then you're wrong, because it's documented that they invaded us and we had to defend ourselves. You need to arm them. You need to give them facts. You can't just fold your arms when they tell you Ojukwu started the war, when you know he didn't. He defended, he tried to protect his people. So our job, as those who are not, who are not supporting the elders for whatever reason, their peculiar gains or whatever, you need to have a balanced and alternate version of what the facts are. You've got to have the information. I don't want you to go there and distort the facts that some people like me to do. I want to go and research, find out what actually happened. Wherever you are, in their libraries, you can ask for data, information about Biafra. You see, people outside know more about it. That's what BEAD is supposed to be doing. BEAD, Biafra Education Awareness Dissemination, is like the information about Biafra is scattered everywhere on the planet. Yeah, the whole world knows about Biafra more than the youth and the elders put together. Britain at one stage boasted, said, we know more about Biafra than any other country. Britain, during the war, because they understand the place, and they want to make sure Biafra did not emerge for a reason best known to themselves. So I'm saying BEAD stands for Biafran Education Awareness Dissemination. So you've got to find that the information about Biafra is scattered all over the world. If they are like a bead, and that bead of knowledge, you're gathering them, you turn into a string of pearls. That is the pearls of wisdom, which you're going to need to emerge as a nation. You need the facts, you need information. So you're an information age. You can't go out there being ignorant. And someone asks you, tell me about Biafra. So, we have genocide. Yes. When? Let me see now. I can't remember the date. Tell me more about Biafra. You said you had genocide. How many people died? Is it 200? Is it 7 million? Is it 20 million? Let's get the facts right. Okay? And then we'll be able to confront our enemies. Okay? So knowledge is power. Let's apply it. Thank you very much.
There were Mazi. Caller on signal. Mazi, hear me, please. Can you hear me? Please go on.
Good evening from here.
There, woman.
Yeah, thank you very much. Dr. Luis Okache, good evening from here. So, my question goes this way. I want to understand from you, why is it that our people, despite of what they have seen with their eyes and other things, why in general, why do they devoid the ability to understand political structure, both local and international? That's number one. Then, secondly, why do our professors, those in educational field and some area, maybe those that can speak, devoid to amend some ugly histories being tabled down by those I will consider as enemy or those who hate Igbos that write our history? Why do they devoid to correct all these problems? And secondly, why not to begin to make change to write our history for ourselves? Igbo languages and other things that's going on. So why are they lacking behind? Thank you very much, and God bless you.
There, woman.
Thank you, my brother. It's a very, very important thing you raised. I'm sorry I didn't get your name. You were asking why did our people not understand political structure? It's a very important question, because supposing we understand the political structure, supposing we know how to vote with one block as a people, okay? Supposing we're able to cast our votes so that we back one candidate. Supposing we want to change the rules of Nigerian politics and say from now on we vote for Mr. Isi1 or Nagalam number 2, because nobody asks number 1 or is a Nagalam 1. So supposing we pick somebody we feel we understand to help us understand the politics. When you come to the House of Rep or the House of Senate, let's say all the Igbo or the Biafran, what they call Southeast, South. You never know they're the North. It's always South. Suppose you put all the votes and you vote for one particular cause, yeah, in the House of Senate or Representative, the people who can change in voting, there are more in Kano State alone than in your Southeast. So, my brother, politics is not the way we're going to survive this problem, because they have rigged it in such a way there are more legislators coming from 1 or 2 states in the north than in the whole Southeast put together. So how are you going to change any of the political, instructions? So we are hamstring. That is why it's taking so long for you to mention it in Biafra, because they have rigged the election, they have rigged the politics, they have rigged everything about us, that you are designed not to emerge at all as a political force. Okay, so that is my take on it. So politics, unfortunately, you can vote until you're blue in the face, get your voting card, get this card, get that card. At the end of the day, you be rigged out. If you're not rigged out, even if you're voting genuinely, the other side have enough voting rights than you do. And when you look at elections, you look at the people lined up to vote. You have children carrying voting cards. Yeah, so you should know that politics is not going to work. The only politics, I think, the voting that is designed that will work and save the people is a referendum, where we say we're fed up with this system, we are going to stay or we're not going to stay. So that is why IPOB is talking about referendum as a solution. But most people think, let's go and vote. Let's have the next election, I will vote for Mr. Y, I will vote for Mrs. X. That will solve the problem. No, it wouldn't. I'm sorry to say. So politics, I'm glad people are beginning to understand it's not going to work for you. because it's rigged in such a way. Not only are the votes rigged, the actual instrumentation of it is so biased that it's not going to work for you. So you need to zeroize everything about the politics in Nigeria so that you have people proportionally represented. Not only that you have a proper census of election so that you know who's actually who. But before you can get to that, you just cancel everything and make sure you have a referendum. Do you want to stay Nigerian or do you want to stay outside Nigeria before we begin to do anything politically? We'll be here till the next 100 years trying to vote. It's not going to solve any problem. That is my own personal view. Then you talk about, to know our history and why do we need to avoid correcting issues. Yeah. So there's a need for all the professors and all the people who know the area who can speak. Could it be that if you are a head of let's say, history professor, and you come and publish something which you know is true, that the people who are going to vet it will lock you up in the next prison available and you disappear? Would you go ahead and do that? So the atmosphere for academic excellence and truth searching is not available. So whilst we blame our learned people, they've also got to survive in the environment they find themselves in. So the system is rotten to the core, so that even those who are in a position to make a difference cannot or will not without risking their lives and livelihoods. So you have to bear that in mind. Thank you.
There, Mazi. And what you said, let me also put this question forward so that you also say something about it. In as much as many of our, or most of our political elites are just, anti-Biafra, anti-people, anti-our people. We have people that serve us regionally, like Sam Bakwe, that try to use their initiatives to do something very good for our people. And we are seeing also one of the present governors, which we all know, that is trying under very hard circumstances. Now, what does it take other people? Why will you try to be a political leader of your people, even regionally, as a governor, a senator, without having the mind of sacrifice for our public interests? Whereas some others, no matter how few they are, they did it and they are doing it. It doesn't matter the situation they face, the hard situation, or the threat to their life they face. Why others cannot do it? Or most of others. Instead, they are anti-people. They are against our people. Like in Imo State. He has to, because of his political interests, if it is somebody reasonable, I used to say it here on Radio Biafra. Even if the caliphate wants him to go there, he politely tell them that, look, oh no, this one is too much. From fourth position, just wait till another election. Let's see, but leave this one because I know it will cause chaos. But he didn't do it because he's hoping or looking forward to that post. So why also is it so? There are some few that are ready to sacrifice, even in the Nigeria setting, to do something. I don't know whether you can say a little bit before I take another caller.
Yes, Mazi, just a little bit. The leaders and the led, they go hand in hand, isn't it? If you go to, let's say, a country called, what's the best way to describe it? Suppose you have a hypothetical country that's called Massaog. Yeah, Massaog. And that Massaog had an election. Somebody won the election. And then they voted, everybody voted, and the fourth person from that election is now made the leader or the winner of the election. All those Massaudians just keep quiet. Yeah? And then, surprise, surprise, things are not going well. Because the person who is now leader did not have a mandate of the people. And we clap for them, and this is from our village in Masadia. And therefore, it's our turn. So the led and the leaders is like, those who are being led are not saying anything or doing anything, and they expect everything to work out perfectly. Where on this planet do you have somebody who came forth in an election, becomes the leader of that particular election or the winner of that election, and everybody throws their arms? Yeah? And then expect no consequences. So that is our problem. We like to vote. By all means, we go to an election, we vote. No regard to the consequences of who won and who didn't win. Until, if you must vote, then act on your mandate. And that is how Nigeria was wrecked, because in the West, they had wild West, because they said, we are not going to put up with Akintola fixing and rigging the election. Men became pregnant overnight. As a referral to people wearing a ballot and stuffing with ballot boxes. They go to ballots and stuff the page. And then say that your government means election and they expect to have peace. So it was that wet year that causes the Nigerians to have a coup, because the Yorubas refused to abide by that nonsense. Yeah? And 50 years plus later, somebody wins when they're not supposed to win, and we throw their arms. Yeah? So that's my own take on the matter. We want to vote, and we don't want to worry about the consequences of somebody trying to rob our mandate. We do nothing about it. Thank you.
There, Mazi. Caller on WhatsApp, can you hear me? Please go on. Welcome to the program. Caller on WhatsApp.
Mazi Jonathan, good evening to you from here. My name is Desmond and I'm calling you from Italy. Mazi Dr. Okachi, good evening to you from here also. I want to thank you for this series of lectures. Doc, you see, our people really passed through a lot and it's very terrible. But the thing is that the best way people can learn their history is through school, from elementary to university, and you can see that today Nigeria controls the educational system within that region, and we cannot get it because the ONUK report, some of us have tried to get it both on the net or it's not coming. Although we saw some things, but then we needed something more that explain what really happened to our people, because from your history also it's very obvious that it's not even complete. Because you talked about Kano, Katsina, and so on, but there are some other places in the north, because it was the planting that we've not really gotten what happened to our people. I want to ask Mazi, you, in one of your series, you talked about how even Europeans in Nigeria then refuse to help our people. What I want to ask is, who informed the Europeans not to help our people? Is it the Nigerian government? Is it the Britain? Is it the international community? Having asked this question, then I want to now bring it to our leaders' situation today. Who is holding our leader today? And what do you think we have to do to get our leader released? Because it is obvious that the detention of our leader goes beyond Nigeria. And then you also talked about, in your last today's you also talked about where they try to attack some of our elites. Then the main elites, them like people like China Achebe in the West, in Yoruba land, trying to cite, they wanted to attack him to know if the pen is sharper than the sword. I also want you to enlighten Biafrans. Is it not high time that Biafrans bring out their money to support ESN? Because They always want to know if the pen is sharper than the sword. And Chinachibi run away for his life, which means the sword is sharper than the pen. Because if the pen is sharper than the sword, it would have stayed. So now, why can't our people bring out money to support ESN and for the land for us to be ready? That is another thing which we have to tell our people on that aspect also. Now, another thing is that there is this thing, Ojukwu, the Aburi Accord agreement, and Ojukwu came back and he was waiting for Gowon to announce what they agree. And that comes in question also. Our leader was here with us, working with DOS, and he went to Kenya and was kidnapped, and DOS was not aware. Who was he talking with? Whom did he trust? Apart from the DOS. Because, you see, if we continue, because here, I don't think there is need for us to ask too much question. It's for us to see what happened to our people and learn from it. That's the only way we can be victorious this time. And I will also say that anything going on with our leader today, the DOS should be aware. And anybody meeting him, they should also be aware. Because, so therefore, they can be relating to Biafrans. Because you can see it's as if what happened in Aburi Accord is what happened in Kenya. In its own form, you know. So what I'm trying to say is that, Mazi, it is high time we talk to our people rawly, as in we open it raw. Since our people don't want to know like raw. Because if you talk now, whom do we trust now? Talking about the
all about. Well, you haven't come to that, but if I might come in. Now, Aburi was to find a solution after the two coups, after the January 15 coup 66 and the July 29 coup 66, and the disturbances that followed, the pogrom that followed. Aburi was to find a solution. So our leaders went to Aburi, they sat together and took decisions. And from grapevine, we understood that it was even our colonial masters that advised one side to say, don't accept these decisions. They are not for your own interests. And these are some of the things that led to the war.
Having reflected on the terms of the Aburi Accord,
yep.
Do you feel that accord would have solved the problem?
Yes, yes. I believe very much in Aburi Accord. The Aburi Accord is still what a lot of us are pursuing today. We are still saying, when you hear true federalism, it is all about Aburi.
Was Aburi not confederalism?
Whether you call it confederalism or not, it was to me more of true federalism.
So Gowon failed by not keeping to the terms of the Aburi agreement.
Yeah, but remember again, when you talk of Gowon, don't see Gowon as a person there. How old was Gowon? At that point, Gowon was about 32 years old. Gowon was about 32 years old. Gowon was as naive as the rest of us.
Was Ojukwu naive?
Well, Ojukwu was not as naive as Gowon, to the extent that Ojukwu read history. Remember, he was a graduate of history. So at least he had a broader outlook.
Was he more prepared than Gowon in that meeting?
Yes, he was. Definitely, he was more. He went there more prepared.
He was prepared.
Yes, please. Yes, you will see it. You will see the signs of his preparation. Yeah,
so he got most of, he got what he wanted.
He got most of what he wanted, but at the same time, Gowon, I must tell you, let people not blame Gowon. Gowon was very, very forthcoming at that meeting. He was honest to himself. He tried to find a solution to the Nigeria's problem. You will see there he was quite an innocent, honest young man. looking for the unity of Nigeria. So Gowon himself believed in Aburi.
But Gowon did not say that. When he returned to Nigeria, he gave it a different interpretation.
No, not he. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
But he released a statement.
Yeah.
He made a broadcast.
Yes.
And he gave an explanation of what Aburi meant to him and the federal government.
No, it was an afterthought. It was what I told you. The colonial masters went through the northern politicians, not Gowon. They didn't go to Gowon. They went through the northern politicians and told them the implications of Aburi. Then the permanent secretaries met and redrafted it completely and rejected most of the parts of the accord.
And the Eastern region came out to say on Aburi we stand.
And that's the beginning of the problem. That is it. That was where we lost hope, because we really came back from Aburi and we heard how they went to Aburi. Everybody felt now Nigerian problem has been solved. But after these negotiations or consultations, the federal government came out with a statement that no, that's not what they meant.
So Achike Odenwa is also saying on Aburi he stands.
I believe in it up till now when I talk of true federalism. That's what I mean. Look, Nigeria is a creation of...
Aburi talked about regional commands.
Yes, Gami was and it was implemented. I remember in the East then, we had the Eastern Command. Eastern Regional Command under Colonel Hilary Njoku. In the West, they had Western Regional Command under, I think, Colonel Olufemi Olutoye was the commander of the Western Command. They had the Midwest Command under Colonel Comrade Wawo. Under Colonel Comrade Wawo. It was the North that they hadn't quite put their own together at the time.
And you want that system now?
Well, it's not just the army command. It goes beyond the army command. Now the army command is not the most important thing in terms of whether it goes regional or not. But what we are saying, now we have 36 states that we should be able to decentralize government. Let me use that word, decentralizing government. What I would mean would be that we have to reduce the items on the exclusive legislative list in the constitution. We reduce them and have a few things in the exclusive legislative list. The other ones we put in the concurrent list and the residual list.
What would the federating units look like? The states or the regions?
Well, this is another. It is all is subject to negotiation. I cannot say exactly what is going to be, because I know some people have said, okay, we go back to the regions. While some people said, no, we have progressed to the level of states now. We cannot go back to regions again. So these are things that are subject to negotiations. They are not casting rock.
Create to keep the East in the Federation. The date was January 5, 1967. At the time, the wobbly nation of Nigeria was on the brink of collapse, and the historic meeting was convened in the serene hills of Aburi, Ghana. With ethnic tensions boiling over, massacres in the north claiming thousands of Igbo lives, and the fragile federation on the verge of disintegration, the two leaders, Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu and Yakubu Gowon, faced off in a battle of wits. The world watched as this high-stakes dialogue, later known as the Aburi Accord, sought to avert an impending civil war and redefine the future of Nigeria. At the end of the 2-day retreat, Ojukwu came out on top and outsmarted Gowon, who agreed to the letter all of Ojukwu's proposals on the way forward to a new Nigeria. However, Gowon was oblivious to what he had signed away in Aburi. When he returned to Lagos, he realized his folly when the permanent secretaries opened his eyes to his agreement with Ojukwu. No doubt, Ojukwu had won the first battle at Aburi, but Gowon, who felt he had been robbed, would not give in and sought to reach a compromise. Of course, he did not cancel all of the agreements, but he inserted some clauses which he called Decree 8 to keep the East in the Federation, while at the same time not granting all of Ojukwu's demands. On Aburi we stand, Ojukwu vowed from Enugu. From Aburi you shall fall, Gowon responded in Lagos. Thus began a back and forth battle of dialogues that would eventually render Aburi null and void and lead to a brutal 30-month civil war which claimed millions of lives. So, how did Ojukwu outsmart Gowon at Aburi? First, let us examine the root cause. The year 1966 marked a watershed moment in Nigerian history, defined by 2 military coups that upended the country's fragile post-independence order and set the stage for the Aburi Accord. These events, driven by ethnic tensions, political rivalries, and the struggle for power, plunged Nigeria into a period of uncertainty and division, ultimately culminating in the Nigerian Civil War. To understand the necessity and significance of the Aburi Accord, one must first probe into the genesis of these coups and their far-reaching consequences. Nigeria, having gained independence from Britain in 1960, inherited a federal system plagued by regionalism and ethnic divisions. The country's 3 dominant ethnic groups, the Hausa and Fulani in the north, the Yoruba in the west and the Igbo in the east, each sought to protect their regional interests, often at the expense of national unity. The First Republic was characterized by political corruption, electoral malpractices, and a lack of accountability. These issues reached a tipping point in the controversial 1964 general elections and the October 1965 Western regional elections, which were widely perceived as rigged, leading to widespread discontent, riots, and killings. A situation then known as Operation Wetie.
Why do I love having a healthcare concierge? It's the speaking to a real live person. It's the call.
Amidst this political chaos, a group of young military officers in the Nigerian army, led predominantly by Igbo officers such as Major Patrick Chukwuma Kadunanze Ogu, staged a coup on January 15, 1966. The coup was ostensibly aimed at eradicating corruption and restoring order. However, it quickly took an ethnic dimension due to the disproportionate targeting of northern and western political and military leaders. Among those killed were Sir Ahmadu Bello, the Sardana of Sokoto and Premier of the Northern Region, Sir Ubaka Tafawa Balewa, the Prime Minister, Chief Samuel Adoki Akintola, Premier of the Western Region, as well as Chief Festus Samuel Okotie Igbo, the Minister of Finance. In contrast, Igbo leaders such as President Nnamdi Azikiwe and Michael Okpara, the Premier of the Eastern Region, were not killed. Also, Chief Dennis Osadibe, the Premier of the Midwest Region, survived the coup untouched. The selective nature of the killings sowed seeds of mistrust and resentment among the northern elites. In the wake of the coup, Major General Johnson Aguiyi-Ironsi, an Igbo army officer and the most senior military officer at the time, assumed power as head of state. While Aguiyi-Ironsi's government sought to stabilize the nation, his policies worsened ethnic tensions. His decision to abolish the federal structure in favor of a unitary system through Decree 34 was perceived by many northerners as an attempt to consolidate Igbo dominance. This perception, coupled with the absence of swift justice for the coup plotters, deepened northern grievances. The discontent in the north culminated in a counter-coup on July 29, 1966, often referred to as the July Remarch. Northern officers, led by Lieutenant Colonel Murtala Mohammed, sought to avenge the deaths of their leaders and redress what they saw as Igbo hegemony. The coup resulted in the brutal assassination of General Aguiyi-Ironsi alongside other Igbo officers and the installation of Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon as head of state. Unlike the January coup, the July coup unleashed widespread violence. Pogroms against Igbo people erupted across the northern region, with thousands of Easterners brutally killed and many more displaced. These massacres triggered a mass exodus of Igbos back to the eastern region, where they sought refuge under the leadership of Lieutenant Colonel Chukwuemeka Odumegu Ojukwu, the military governor of the eastern region. The events of 1966 created an atmosphere of deep mistrust between the regions. The eastern region under Ojukwu increasingly viewed the federal military government as incapable of ensuring the safety and rights of Easterners. Meanwhile, Gowon faced immense pressure from northern leaders and the military officers who demanded a stronger stance against what they perceived as Igbo insubordination. Ojukwu's demands for justice and the safety of Eastern Nigerians were met with resistance from Gowon's government, which was preoccupied with holding the country together. The absence of a clear chain of command further complicated matters, as Ojukwu and Gowon often operated as equals rather than subordinates within a unified government. This impasse deepened the division, with the eastern region increasingly asserting its autonomy. By late 1966, the situation had reached a boiling point. Amid fears of an all-out civil war, the need for dialogue became urgent. The international community, particularly Ghana's head of state, Lieutenant General Joseph Ankara, stepped in to mediate. It was agreed that a high-level meeting of Nigeria's military leaders would take place in a neutral venue, Aburi, Ghana, in January 1967. The Aburi meeting was intended as a last-ditch effort to salvage Nigeria's unity. The goal was to address the political, military, and constitutional issues threatening the Federation. Ojukwu sought regional autonomy to protect the eastern region, while Gowon aimed to preserve Nigeria as a unified state. The stage was set for a negotiation that would determine the fate of a nation. The Aburi meeting started on January 4, 1967 and lasted 2 days. Aburi was as much a battle of intellect and strategy as it was a diplomatic negotiation. Ojukwu entered the talks with a meticulously crafted plan to secure his region's interests. His approach at Aburi showcased his deep understanding of Nigeria's political landscape, his ability to exploit his rivals' weaknesses, and his skill in navigating the complexities of negotiation. Ojukwu's preparation for the Aburi meeting was both comprehensive and strategic. He immersed himself in Nigeria's constitutional history, particularly the regional autonomy enshrined in the Constitution of the First Republic.
At IHG Hotels and Resorts, you can explore the neighborhood or live like a local. Unplug for the day or plunge into a long weekend. With IHG's 21 hotel brands, you can guess how you guessed.
Are you getting less than $3,340 in Social Security and you're a senior on Medicare or Medicaid? Here's some fantastic news. They've recently updated their policies to help.
Armed with this knowledge, he was able to articulate his position with clarity and legal precision, framing his demands within the context of Nigeria's foundational agreements. While Gowon attended the meeting without adequate preparations in terms of a crew of legal and political advisors, which such a meeting demanded, Ojukwu on the other hand meant business. He arrived in Aburi with a strong team of legal, political and economic advisors, secretaries and realms of paper. With this, he was able to outsmart Gowon, especially in his ability to frame the Eastern region's grievances in terms that resonated beyond ethnic boundaries. Ojukwu portrayed the Eastern region's push for autonomy not as an act of secession, but as a legitimate response to systemic injustices and a means to safeguard the lives and property of Easterners. This narrative positioned him as a defender of his people's rights rather than a rebel, garnering sympathy and understanding from neutral observers. Ojukwu said that his region was worried that, contrary to Gowon's promise on August 9, 1966, that all soldiers would return to their region of origin, northern troops still occupied the western region. Gowon replied that his promise of August 9 applied to the repatriation of soldiers of northern origin stationed in the east back to the north, and those of eastern origin stationed in the north back to the east. Gowon then said he had fulfilled his promise. He then emphasized that soldiers of northern origin would remain in the west since there were only a few Yoruba in the Nigerian army. However, Ojukwu was not satisfied and further insisted on a reorganization of the army on a regional basis. Gowon was also firmly opposed to splitting up the army. Ojukwu then claimed that Nigeria did not have a central government since the country, as a result of the second coup and its aftermath, resolved itself into three separate sovereign areas: the Lagos West North area, the Midwest area, and the East area. But Gowon insisted that Nigeria was still one nation, an entity composed of 4 regions, and the central government in Lagos. During the negotiations, Ojukwu demonstrated an exceptional command of language and rhetoric. He deliberately emphasized terms such as devolution of power, which were less likely to provoke alarm than secession or independence. This careful choice of words allowed him to present his proposals as reasonable and consistent with Nigeria's federal structure, making it difficult for Gowon and his delegation to outright reject them. For instance, Ojukwu used the words drawing apart instead of secession when he proposed the standalone of regions in order to avoid further friction and further killings. The other leaders, who all wanted one Nigeria, agreed to Ojukwu's proposal without understanding the implications because Ojukwu maxed his words. The cornerstone of Ojukwu's strategy was his emphasis on decentralization. He proposed that each region should have control over its resources, security, and governance, effectively reducing the powers of the central government. This proposal appealed to the principle of federalism and aligned with the historical demands of other regions, particularly the Western region. Ojukwu was very much aware of Gowon's vulnerabilities, particularly his relative inexperience and divided loyalties within the federal military government. Gowon's position as head of state was not entirely secure, as he faced pressure from northern hardliners and other military factions. Ojukwu capitalized on this by adopting a firm but non-confrontational tone, forcing Gowon to carefully weigh his responses to avoid alienating key stakeholders. By exploiting Gowon's ignorance, Ojukwu got what he wanted. He had outsmarted Gowon, and this was the bombshell of Aburi. agreements reached at Aburi reflected many of Ojuku's demands. The accord recognized the principle of regional autonomy and proposed a framework that would grant significant powers to Nigeria's regions. For Ojuku, this was a major tactical victory as it provided a legal and moral basis for the Eastern region's push for autonomy. By agreeing to Ojuku's argument that the regions should first pull apart in order to stay together, the other leaders in effect sanctioned the secession of the Eastern region, hence the end of Nigeria as a single nation. Not only did the other leaders agree with Ojuku that the regions and the peoples of the nation first draw apart, but they also agreed to his suggestion that there should be no supreme commander of the army, hence no head of government or head of state. What Ojuku wanted was that whoever was at the top should be a titular head who would only act when all of them had met and taken a unanimous decision. Since the unanimous decision of all the regions was required before he could act in all matters which affect any of the regions or the nation as a whole, the commander-in-chief and head of a government was so only in name. He would still be a titular head.
Stop wasting hours online searching for flight tickets. Just call Flight Booking 247 from now on. They find the best deals within minutes. It's like having a free personal travel assistant, and it's so convenient, especially when you're busy. Trust me, it will save you time and money. Call Flight.
The point of the agreement at Aburi was that each region would be responsible for its own affairs and that the federal military government would be responsible for matters that affected the entire country. Afterwards, the officers toasted their reconciliation. The federal delegation's jubilation was such that on his plane flight home, Ojuku asked one of his secretaries whether Gowon had fully understood the implications of what had been agreed. However, no one at Aburi, other than Ojuku, really understood the constitutional implications of what had been agreed. Ojuku was obviously delighted with this, hence why he was in such a hurry to implement the decisions that were taken. Although Ojuku had outsmarted Gowon at the negotiation table and won the battle at Aburi, he would face another battle back home in Nigeria when Gowon, after his eyes were opened to how he had signed away the country in Ghana, reneged on the agreement and refused to fully implement the Aburi Accord, setting the stage for further conflict. Federal permanent secretaries who headed the various ministries of the government as of then, as well as political and legal experts in the country, were appalled at the contents of the Aburi Agreement when their leaders returned home. The permanent secretaries met on January 20, 1967 to evaluate the agreement, and they rightly argued that the title of Commander-in-Chief was a subtle way of either abolishing the post of the Supreme Commander or declaring it vacant, now that its previous occupant, Major General Johnson Aguiyi-Ironsi, was dead. They further reported that the proposal that all appointments to top posts in the military, civil service and the diplomatic corps be unanimously approved by the Supreme Military Council would tend to paralyze the functions of the Federal Public Service Commission. They also noted that the allegiance and loyalty of the regionally appointed officers of the federal government would be to regions, meaning in effect there would be no federal public service. The summary of their report was that the Aburi Agreement summed up to a confederation. The leaders themselves were shocked. Then, from February 16 through February 18, 1967, Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon summoned a meeting of the secretaries to the military government and other officials, which was held in Benin City, over a memo one of the permanent secretaries had written concerning the Aburi Accord. The memo traced the long, hard road that Nigeria had traveled and stressed the need to keep a united nation. The permanent secretary who wrote this memo was Prince Solomon Akenzua, who later, as Eredua I, became the 39th Oba of Benin on March 23, 1979. However, Prince Akenzua was an outstanding civil servant. In fact, he rose to become the Federal Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Health, before he retired in 1973. Akenzua in the memo said that Gowon had given too much away in Aburi and that it would lead to the destruction of the country. He also said that Gowon had legalized total regionalism, which would make the center very weak. Prince Akenzua further alluded in his memo that a weak center would lead to a confederation and the total disintegration of Nigeria. The shocking revelation of the meeting of the Aburi Agreement overshadowed some of the important decisions the leaders agreed to at Aburi in their search for peace and for a new basis of a stable federal union, or at least a national unity. Aburi on the whole was a big success, but the interpretation of what transpired at the meeting devalued the success. Ironically, implementing the decisions agreed on at Aburi was necessary. Ojukwu then set March 31, 1967 as a deadline for the unilateral implementation of the Aburi Accord. Gowon, on the other hand, broke his promise and restated that the constitutional changes the East proposed would not work because such changes would result in the end of Nigeria as a single nation. As Prince Akenzua had written in his memo, Gowon had given too much away in Aburi that would have led to the destruction of the country. He legalized total regionalism, which would make the center very weak. And the weak center would eventually lead to a confederation and total disintegration of Nigeria.
If you only own one car, you're going to want to listen to this. $36 per month for full coverage. You heard me right. Go ahead, click that link I put below, and you could get some quotes from some really...
While the federal permanent secretaries were evaluating the documents to which their leaders were signatories, Ojukwu and the East had grown tougher with their demands. On their own, the other military leaders on March 17, 1967 issued a significant policy, Decree 8, which conferred far more powers on the regional governments than ever before. This was deliberately done in the hope that the new and greater degree of decentralization would placate the East so that it would not secede and the potentially consequent brutal war would be avoided. This Decree 8 ignored the reports of the permanent secretaries but did not fully concur with Ojukwu's demands. It also decentralized the government to such an extent that the regions were virtually autonomous units in which each regional governor had executive powers. However, Ojukwu would reject the decree because a part of the decree partially impeded his authority as a governor. Further, the decree provided that the Supreme Military Council could also take appropriate measures against the region that attempted to secede from the rest of the Federation and could take over the functions of that region. The part Ojukwu and his Easterners hated the most was that the federal government could declare a state of emergency in any region which violated any of the provisions of the decree on the consent of the remaining 3 regions, instead of the unanimous decision of all the 4 regions. As a result, Ojukwu set March 31, 1967 as the D-Day for the unilateral implementation of the Aburi Agreement. But the East did not secede. Instead, it seized all federal revenue that came from that part of the country. meantime, the Yoruba people were dissatisfied with the presence of troops of northern region who occupied the western region, and the decision to recruit Yoruba people into the army did little to ease those feelings. So the Yoruba, through Chief Obafemi Awolowo, proposed that should Ojukwu and the East secede, the West would feel free to follow suit. The federal government was caught pants down, while Ojukwu and his followers in the East popped champagne. While the federal government was still trying to steady itself from these revelations, the northern leaders made an astonishing suggestion: the creation of more states. The nation was stunned. The question of the creation of more states, particularly in the north, had been a perennial issue that northern politicians had always resisted. Thus, southerners had accused the north of trying to dominate Nigeria forever. They also believed that the Nigerian crisis would be over if the north accepted that power could be shared. Breaking up the north into more states, which was what the east and other parts of the nation wanted, would provide the answer. The northern decision was a pleasant surprise to most of the nation, particularly the minority people of the north, that is, the Middle Belt areas, and those of the Cross River Ogoja Rivers area, which Ojukwu would later claim as part of Biafra. Because of this, Ojukwu did not agree with the Northern Declaration on the creation of more states. The Yorubas, who had been ardent advocates for the creation of more states, were pleased with this unprecedented northern move and eventually supported the federal government. Now energized, the federal government was ready for a showdown with Ojukwu as the authorities in the eastern region executed some acts which provoked the federal government. These acts included the seizure of over £200,000 worth of produce belonging to the Northern Region Marketing Board that was in Port Harcourt in the east awaiting shipments, the confiscation of 1/3 of the entire rolling stock of the Nigerian Railway, as well as 115 oil tankers. Other acts included the seizure, also at Port Harcourt, of a Nigeria Airways DC-3 aircraft that had left the Ikeja airport earlier on the same day, on April 5, 1967. A week later, 3 Igbo gunmen in civilian clothes hijacked another plane belonging to the Nigeria Airways, which was flying from Benin in the Midwest region to Lagos. The federal government immediately halted all further flights to the eastern region. Terrorist activities in Lagos and other parts of the country heightened tension. Before long, the sanctions against the East were beginning to bite as a result of an economic blockade of the Eastern region in early May 1967. A few days later, on May 26, 1967, Ojukwu addressed the East Consultative Assembly, consisting of some 300 delegates from all provinces in the East, where he asked them to choose one of these 3 alternatives. 1. Accepting the terms of the North and go on, thereby submitting to the domination from the North. 2. Continuing the present stalemate and drift. Or 3. Ensuring their survival by declaring their autonomy. The assembly got the message. For whatever it was worth, it gave Ojukwu the powers and urged him to declare at an early practicable date for Eastern Nigeria as a free, sovereign and independent state by the name and title of the Republic of Biafra. The authorities in Lagos had anticipated the move and had prepared for it. On May 27, 1967, Gowon declared a state of emergency for the entire nation and announced that he had assumed full powers. Decree 8, which was promulgated deliberately to appease Ojukwu and the East, was abrogated. Gowon also announced that Nigeria was divided into more states, 12 in all. Nigerians were jubilant as the minorities felt secure and out of domination by the majority of people within the former regions. The northern region was broken into 6 states: Northwestern, North Central, Northeastern, Benue Plateau, Kano, and Kwara, thereby cracking its monolithic posture. The East was broken into 3, with the Igbo people having their own states, East Central, and the non-Igbo minority peoples in the East 2 of their own states, Rivers and Southeastern. The Midwest remained as it was. Some areas of the Western region like Yaba, Ikeja, and Ikorodu were carved out and merged with the Federal Territory of Lagos to form Lagos State. What remained of the Western region became the Western States. The creation of more states in the country pushed the East Central states in the Igbo heartland into an interior pocket, cut off from coastal oil reserves and its 2 seaports of Port Harcourt and Calabar. Thus, the lack of seaports for the East Central states was not unique. For the secessionists, the creation of more states was a bombshell, a political reality that they refused to accept or even believe. They began to speed up the withdrawal of the Eastern region, which would include, according to them, the 2 new states of Rivers and Southeastern, with capitals in Port Harcourt and Calabar, respectively. On May 30, 1967, Ojukwu proclaimed that the territory and region known as Eastern Nigeria, together with her continental shelves and territorial waters, would henceforth be an independent sovereign state of the name and title, the Republic of Biafra. A new flag was hoisted in public buildings in the east, and the police and army appeared in different uniforms. A national anthem that sounded like Sibelius's Finlandia, and which former President Nnamdi Azikiwe later claimed was plagiarized from his poem Ode to Onitsha, was broadcast. While nothing particularly dramatic happened for the next 30 days, the atmosphere was tense. Although Gowon had his own share of the blame, especially his carelessness after Abure, he did everything possible to prevent the Nigerian balloon from bursting and to appease Ojukwu to the extent that many Nigerians were doubting whether the federal government was a sick dog that could neither bark nor bite. Nigeria's political instability had now been pushed to its limits. On July 6, 1967, the federal government mounted what she initially termed a police action to arrest the secession. Subsequent events soon showed that it was not a mere police action. It was much more serious than that, particularly with the rebel capture of the Midwest region through another Igbo-engineered plot in the small Benin garrison on August 9, 1967. The assault on the Midwest had been a miscalculation that led to the Midwest Boomerang, when the federal military government mounted a counter-offensive with Lieutenant Colonel Murtala Mohammed at the forefront. The secession was now such that it could not be stopped by just a police action, and the result was a 30-month cruel civil war in which over 1 million innocent civilians' lives were lost, equipment worth billions of dollars wasted, and thousands of stalwart soldiers on both sides dead. In the end, the Biafrans surrendered unconditionally, pledged their allegiance to Nigeria, and the civil war officially ended on January 15, 1970, after Ojukwu had fled to Côte d'Ivoire and his deputy Philippe Effiong declared an end to the Republic of Biafra.
You deserve the best. At Harbor Freight, you can afford it. We design our own.
Interestingly, everything discussed at the Aburi Conference is still relevant in today's Nigeria. The Aburi Accord, signed in January 1967 in Aburi, Ghana, represents a critical yet ultimately unsuccessful effort to avert the Nigerian Civil War. Its historical legacy is both profound and cautionary, offering insight into the complexities of political negotiations in deeply divided societies. The Accord and its aftermath underscore the importance of mutual trust, clear communication, and effective implementation mechanisms in high-stakes negotiations. The Aburi Accord arose amidst escalating tensions following Nigeria's post-independence crisis, particularly the 1966 coups, ethnic massacres, and the displacement of millions of Eastern Nigerians, primarily the Igbo people. These events culminated in the secessionist ambitions of the Eastern region, led by Lieutenant Colonel Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu. Seeking to prevent a civil war, representatives of the Nigerian federal government and the Eastern region convened in Aburi under the auspices of Ghana's military leader, Lieutenant General Joseph Arthur Ankra. The accord outlined agreements on key issues, including decentralization of power, military restructuring, and measures to protect the Eastern region. It proposed a confederal structure, granting the region significant autonomy while maintaining the unity of Nigeria. The agreement seemed promising, with both parties expressing satisfaction at the end of the talks. However, the accord's implementation faltered due to the differing interpretations and the mutual distrust. The federal government, led by Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon, viewed the confederal provisions as threatening national unity and sovereignty. Conversely, Ojukwu and the Eastern leadership perceived subsequent federal actions as a betrayal of the accord's spirit. This breakdown in trust and communication worsened the already fragile situation, eventually leading to the declaration of the Republic of Biafra and the onset of the Nigerian Civil War. The failure to implement the Aburi Accord highlights a critical missed opportunity to address Nigeria's political and ethnic divisions peacefully. The inability of both sides to commit to the agreed terms underscored the fragility of negotiated settlements in an atmosphere of deep-seated mistrust. The accord introduced a framework that recognized the value of regional autonomy in addressing Nigeria's ethnic and regional diversity. Although the Civil War nullified the Aburi agreements, the debate it sparked influenced subsequent constitutional developments, including the federal restructuring Nigerians clamor for today. The failure of the Aburi Accord weakened trust in dialogue as a conflict resolution mechanism, setting a precedent for doubt towards future political agreements in Nigeria. The perception of betrayal fostered a narrative of distrust that lingers in Nigerian politics. Instead of resolving tensions, the collapse of the Aburi Accord further polarized the parties involved. It provided a justification for the Eastern region's secession and underscored the federal government's determination to preserve the country's unity at all costs. The accord remains a reference point in discussions about conflict resolution in Africa, particularly in multi-ethnic states. It demonstrates the perils of negotiations conducted without robust mechanisms for implementation and conflict de-escalation. Effective negotiations require precise agreements with clear terms that all parties interpret uniformly. The ambiguity in the Aburi Accord's provisions allowed for conflicting interpretations, undermining its effectiveness. Mutual trust is essential in negotiations. The Nigerian context of ethnic rivalries and historical grievances made trust building challenging, but its absence proved fatal to the Accord's success. The role of Ghana as a host was significant. but the process lacked a neutral third-party mediator who could actively facilitate dialogue, resolve disputes, and ensure adherence to agreements. Political agreements must include practical steps and timelines for implementation, along with mechanisms for resolving disputes that arise during execution. The lack of such provisions in the Aburi Accord contributed to its failure. The Accord's focus on decentralization reflected an attempt to address Nigeria's diversity, but failed to adequately account for the federal government's concerns about unity. Negotiations must balance regional aspirations with national interests. The Aburi Accord underscores the importance of proactive measures to de-escalate conflicts. Early action to implement agreements and maintain dialogue could have prevented the situation from deteriorating into war.
LinkedIn can't make your boss less cringy, but we can help you find a new job.
This is my all-time favorite snack. They were a staple in my house. Cheez-It crackers are a past, present, and will always be my go-to snack. I'm open them because I can't not have a few if they're in front of me.
The Aburi Accord stands as a sad reminder of the complexities inherent in resolving political disputes in deeply divided societies. While it represented a significant effort to address Nigeria's political crisis, its failure exemplifies the pitfalls of inadequate implementation, ambiguous agreements, and mutual distrust. For modern Nigeria and other multi-ethnic states, the lessons of the Aburi Accord remain relevant, emphasizing the need for inclusive, transparent, and sustainable approaches to political negotiations and conflict resolution. Ojuku's approach at Aburi was a masterclass in negotiation and strategic thinking. Through meticulous preparation, astute vocabulary, and an ability to exploit his rivals' weaknesses, he secured agreements that advanced the interests of the eastern region. Although Ojukwu might have outsmarted Gowon in Aburi, the failure of the federal government to honor the accord underscored the challenges of achieving lasting solutions in a deeply divided nation. The Aburi Accord, while a tactical triumph for Ojukwu, ultimately became another chapter in Nigeria's journey towards a brutal civil war.
Of May. What led to the 30th of May? We will be doing this as time permits, so that most of you will understand what happened. It is not a joke.
Aburi did not emerge out of nowhere. The meeting was from Nigeria and had just gone through rules.
I'll be right back with you.
Declaration of Independence, DOI, is far more than just ink. Function, how it interacts with laws, and its political system. The Declaration provides the legal basis for other states to support them without violating international...
On May 30th, On May 30th, 1960.
The war comes, and I do think it's imminent. You're quite right. And I do think it is imminent. You're quite right. It will for us be the price of freedom. Our people here have for a long time been prepared for this eventuality, and I am confident of their readiness. I think that when it does come, that the people on the other side would be surprised. War comes, and I do think it is imminent. You're quite right. It will for us be the price of freedom. Our people here have for a long time been prepared for this eventuality, and I am confident of their readiness. I think that when it does come,
yes, sir. Yeah.
I consider me host to South Africa National Executive.
Call me after this special broadcast. You can.
Okay, what time will it end?
Just text me. Text me with your.
I texted you. You. Sir.
Okay, I will get to it. Right now, I'm running a special program for our people.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
So just let me know the time when you're likely going to end, so I can program this for that.
You.
People on the other side would be surprised. War comes.
Anticipation. Things Ojukwu anticipated. After all, all efforts were made to avert war. But it was inevitable. Britain put us in this condition.
Welcome to African Affairs, a DCTV program on Africa in Washington, D.C., United States of America. Today, we are honored with the presence of His Excellency Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu. He is our special guest tonight. Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu was the former military governor of the Eastern Group of Provinces, which we call Eastern Region. Now, these Eastern Group of Provinces, or what you call Eastern Region, have been divided into these states: Anambra, Ebonyi, Akwa Ibom, Rivers, Bayelsa, Imo, Abia, and Cross River states. His Excellency later became the head of state of the Independent Republic of Biafra. Now he has been duly coronated as Eze Igbo, the paramount leader of Igbo land, that is, of all Igbo districts in Nigeria. He graduated from Edson College and from Oxford University in England with master's degree in history. Your Excellency, welcome to our program. Thank you very much, Professor. I'm particularly happy to be with you this evening.
Thank you. The questions we are going to ask, I'm going to ask you. Number one, a lot have been written about the 15th of January 1966 coup. The most erroneous being that it was an Igbo coup, which gave the Hausas or the northern Muslims the pretext to attack the Igbos. Please enlighten the world on events of the January 15, 1966 coup. Who carried out the coup and for what reasons?
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to try and enlighten people on this coup that seems to be at the center of subsequent problems in Nigeria. The coup of January 15th, 1966 was actually led by Major Ifajuna, and he commanded the activities in the south, and Zogo, another major, coordinated the northern side of it from Kaduna. The reason for the coup, if you remember, Nigeria became independent in 1960. We had a government, a quasi-Westminster type government with a parliament and a ceremonial president, reflecting, as it were, the Queen of Great Britain. That was Dr. Nnamdi Kanu, and Tafawa Balewa was the president from the north. Now, the real problem with Nigeria has always been the imbalance of the federation that was known as Nigeria. I remember when I was at school, I was taught that the great thing about a federation was that no federating unit should ever be preponderant over the others. As it happened, the Nigerian Federation, when it was created, was given down to Nigerians from London. And that federation contained the imbalance of the North being preponderant, in fact, over the two other sides, the West and the East. And this created, right from the first day, a certain degree of friction. The North could dictate, and the South, whichever part of the South, could just complain if it's not in accord with what the North wished. The first few years of independence were not too bad, but there were a lot of unfulfilled ambitions of the Nigerians, because in those days we thought that once you got independence, you were free and everything worked, and you joined the higher league of nations internationally, discussing what went on. In fact, to Nigerians it looked as though, and indeed they tended to show, that independence in itself was the achievement. Now Nigeria was free, were a member of the world. Instead of looking upon it as the beginning of our journey to nationhood. And I say this, and I want to underscore it. Nigeria has never been a nation. We had the aspiration, hopes that Nigeria one day would become a nation. And that has been elusive up till today. The reason being that, most unfortunately, the powers in Nigeria were concentrated in the hands of the North, which was preponderant, and wrongly so. At independence, we hoped we would be able, in fact, the three leaders of the country had different notions of independence. There was the actual leader of the struggle for independence, Dr. Nnamdi Kanu, who rightly thought that independence now created, as it were, a beginning, but that we were already a nation and we were now finding our positions in his own philosophical, political beliefs in Pan-Africanism. So we just had to move into the broad continental alliance. The North, under the Sardanar of Sokoto, whose agent was the Prime Minister Tafawa Balewa, felt that the Nigerian nation one had to tread very slowly, because he saw and they saw a great deal of inequities in Nigeria, and perhaps the most important then was the level of education between the North and the South.
Yes, these are the things that piled up, and the war started. And the Nigerian Navy in Calabar, this is them.
1967, a Nigerian Navy Armada under Navy Captain Soro leaves Bonny en route to Calabar. In the ships are heavily armed troops of the Federal Nigerian 3rd Commando Division, commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Benjamin Adenkule, the Black Scorpion. Operation Tiger Claw had begun. At the time, Calabar was part of Biafra and was defended by the Biafran 9th Battalion led by Major Ogbo Orji. In fact, his battalion was responsible for the defense of Biafra's entire southeast coastline, from Ikang on the Cameroon border to Pogo, 75 miles away on the Imo River Basin. October 1967, a Nigerian Navy Armada under Navy Captain Soro leaves Bonny en route to Calabar. In the ships are heavily armed troops of the Federal Nigerian 3rd Commando Division, commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Benjamin Adenkule, the Black Scorpion. Operation Tiger Claw had begun. At the time, Calabar was part of Biafra and was defended by the Biafran 9th Battalion led by Major Ogbo Orji. In fact, his battalion was responsible for the defense of Biafra's entire southeast coastline, from Ikang on the Cameroon border to Pogo, 75 miles away on the Imo River Basin. October 1967.
That was where they started, apart from the Obudu area. And we will get to that. Yes, we will get to that. So it's what I'm saying, that what we are doing is very necessary for our people to know what we pass through. So we'll be having these short episodes whenever time permits. So let's do the needful and let our people be very very atalat.
Shenzhenina, what have we done? Sono setsu inkululeko, our sin is freedom. Biafra yavuga, rise up now. Vuga, vuga, bantu base Biafra. Amanda, awetu us. Inkululeko ye Biafra. Freedom for Biafra. Stand with us. Seke Biafra. Support Biafra. Unity is our strength. Umbanonga mandla. Stand together. Fight injustice. Ukungabina bulungisa kuya bulungi. Ayizulukeme oh. Ayizulukeme. Ubibasuluke mama. Ayizulukeme. Ayizulukeme oh. Ayizulukeme. Ibayizuluke mama. Ayizulukeme.
Anu wani bo indigenous people of Biafra. IPOB na HAMPNP. N'okpuru onye ntụanị bụ Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. Site n'aka ndị nlekọta ma nke ha riri bụ DOS ekwupụta na iri abalị atọ nke ọnwa ise a anyị nọ n'ime ya bụ Satọde ma bụrụkwa ahịa afọ ga-abụ ụbọchị emume ncheta ochie etike ha ikom inyom ntorobịa tinyere ụmụaka bụ ndị tiri ịgba ịhụ na ihe agaghị eri ọba ebe Biafra na-agaghị abụ ihe akụkọ n'agha ọkwụrụ mba ahụ ndị na-aga jiri ewapụ Naijiria na ndị ọbịa kpọ bụ Britain busoro Biafra n'afọ 1967 ruo 1970. Emume ncheta pụrụ iche bụ nke ha kpọrọ Biafra Heroes and Heroines Remembrance Day n'asụsụ bekee ga-adịkwa very very audaciously. Mmadụ ọ ga-egbu aka ole akpọ ya ugbu agụ ndị ji mberede mee ka ụwa niile mara na mberede ga-eji amara dike ebe ha gosikwara mba ụwa na ịmara nke a ịma nke ọzọ site n'ịrụpụta ihe ha gbara ụwa dum garị n'anya ugwu na igwe ojukwu pọket shọ batrị amọ tank mmanụ eji ana ụgbọelu ebe ụgbọelu na-adakwa n'ime abalị ejighị ọkụ ọ gịnị na-eme onye hụtụrụ nke a ebe injinia ha niile bụ elelebe ejeghị ọlụ ya mere gịnị mere anyị agaghị akwanye ndị ahụ aka na-achọ ihe na-ata arụ ugwu n'ihi nke ụbọchị ahụ okporo ụzọ niile dị n'ala Biafra ga-aghọ ọzara ahịa niile nke ukwu nke nta tinyere ahịa maka arahụ ụra eteghị ete skuul filin steshọn ọdụ ụgbọala keke ọkada ụgbọelu ụgbọ mmiri ụgbọ oloko bank webaro pusha baisekụl kwandem fon kwandem laptọp kwandem tinyere ndị akpatara ọ gaghị adịta dee onye ọbụla respekt onwe ya nna m ọbụla n'ụdị ha ga-akwanyekwuru onwe ha ugwu n'ihi na ụbọchị ahụ bụ 30th May 2026 bụ Satọde bụ siti Ibadan na Agege ebe ọ ga-abụ total lockdown n'ala Biafra niile ka ọ dịghị n'uche na ọ dịghị onye ọbụla agụfuru site na siti at home na Agege politishan ndị eze ndị ụkọchukwu ebe a na-agaghị enwe emume ọbụla gị n'ụbọchị ahụ ebe ụmụnne anyị dị na-anọ ọkụ n'obi ga-ewere anwụrụ ọkụ ha n'ụbọchị ahụ chụọrọ anyị mere na-abụghị ebute esemokwu dịka anyị na-echeta 1967 ruo n'afọ 1970 anyị agaghị echefukwa mkpọ masaka Great Bridge Afarukwu Ibeku Ebonyi Ụzọ Nwanyị National High School Aba Ala Imo Agwa Ibom Odigbo Igwe Ọcha na-echefu iko nsọ Waka Awụra Junior Ikechukwu Ugwuha Mendi tinyere ndị ọzọ aka na-egbu ruo taa si tinyekwanụ at home were oche mkpụmkpụ n'uche ụzọkwu na oche ndị eze na-etuo n'eshige isi tie down na kede tụgharịa uche na-ekpere cheta ụmụnne anyị ndị ahụ tara ahụhụ maka anyị ọ bụkwa na osi ngwa ngwa na-asị good morning ọ malitela ebe ọ ga-akwụsị na good evening biko onye ọbụla banyere onwe ya ugwu n'ihi na ugwu bụ nkwenkwe katkist ejiri mụta Archdeacon naanị ndị ọrụ ahụike na ndị ụlọ ọgwụ agwụla ndị mkpụrụ ike ịkọ ọrụ ma mebekwa echefula itinye maọbụ jiri uwe ejirimara maọbụ ID card maka ezi nkọwa 30th May ụbọchị anyanwụ jụrụ ịwa ọnwa agụ ọbara kpakpando ebe ihe si ebelebela n'akwa ka ọ banyego n'ụdị ntị na 30th May 2026 bụ Satọde bụ Biafra Heroes and Heroines Remembrance Day bụ sitie at home na Keluwu alias total lockdown ozi esi n'aka ndị DOS nke IPOB ndị mara nke ha riri na bịarụ
This is the end of the short episode. We're going to repeat that tomorrow. Have a nice day.
First month being January 2023. Tata Bobo Chiorie. Therefore, I welcome each and every one of you to welcome your friends and well-wishers, even your enemies. Do not deny them listening onto this hallowed platform, because this is the voice of freedom. This is a revolutionary radio. All those things you cannot hear from any other mainstream media. I bet you, here we preach the gospel as long as it is truth. We don't mince words with truth. We don't care how politically correct it can sound. We expose it here on Radio Biafra London, because this is the voice of revolution. This is a revolutionary radio. This radio is meant for both mental and physical awakening. This is a Renaissance radio being established by Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, who is currently in the enemy dungeon. Our supreme leader, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, notwithstanding the court decision, the appeal court order of his release, the Nigeria Supreme Court went on into validating illegality by referring the case of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu back to lower court, irrespective that they agreed that Mazi Nnamdi Kanu has been wronged, that he was renditioned from Kenya, which is illegal. But nonetheless, Nigeria being a banana republic, where there is no rule of law, where they don't even obey their own constitution, obey their own law, they made sure to continue supporting and legalizing illegality. And the worst part of it is this: people are clamoring for peace in Nigeria. People are shouting, let there be peace. How can there be peace without justice? There will be no peace without justice. Somoro reiterated it even, is it today or yesterday, when he was also calling for Mazi Nnamdi Kanu's release. I commend him. It doesn't matter how. Onyeme Nkoma, I told you, that is what Mazi Nnamdi Kanu said. That there will be no peace without justice. Stop calling for peace. Stop calling for tranquility and unity. Just fight for justice, and peace and tranquility will be the end product, the byproduct of justice, nothing more. But you cannot continue dealing with people validating illegality and you'll be calling for peace. It's impossible. It's not done. It's not done. Therefore, here on Radio Biafra, this is the voice of the voiceless. Today, as I put it out, because since over 1 week, I have not come on air due to some obvious reasons, including health issue. But last Sunday, I wanted to be on air, which I put out on my Facebook platform. But unfortunately, I have a very nasty technical issue, which I battled since that day. I was battling it, and I was highly mad, honestly. That was the reason why I couldn't make it. So I apologize. It is not my fault. It wasn't my fault, honestly, last Sunday, because I wanted to be on air last Sunday, but I couldn't make it because of restraint from technical inability. That is the reality. Here on Radio Biafra, we say it as it is. So, but since that last Sunday, it was only yesterday that the situation was resolved, because we have been battling the technical issue since that day. Until yesterday, it was resolved. That's why I'm able to be on air, and we continue being. Therefore, once again, I welcome each and every one of you to welcome your friends and well-wishers onto this hallowed platform, because today is going to be an interactive session with listeners all over the world. Biafrans and lovers of freedom. It doesn't matter, even if here we don't discriminate. Even if you are a Chinese, a Fulani, call. We don't discriminate. What we value is what comes out from you, not who you are, your identity. No. This is Biafra restoration. This is Biafrans. This is how we behave. It doesn't matter whether you are Hausa or Fulani or Yoruba or Arab. As long as you are a truth lover, you call in and air your view. Even if sometimes you are not on the same wavelength with our points, call in order to make your point so that we argue, we debate. Intelligent debate is needed. That is it. Because that is what makes people move forward. Debate. Without debate, you cannot move forward. Because you can be believing that your point is the best. But once you have even contrary opinion, you learn. We learn from each other. It is called symbiosis. Mutual benefit. We learn from each other. We correct from each other. That is why you have competition. You know, in world athletic or Olympic games, you have champions from every country. Champions. Competing with their fellow champions from other parts of the world, from every other country. Now, that once you come out, you will see your ability or your country's level when you compete with others internationally. That is how things move. Maybe in your country as an athlete, you will be the best. With this nothing, you run and you become local champion and best. But the level, maybe your level, the country's level, is not up to other countries. You will only know it when you compete with others. So that's why we welcome intelligent debate to learn. Not just coming to cause nuisance. No. Here we learn. Because human consciousness learns. It is, human consciousness is made. Awaken the mindset. Neutral mindset, human mindset, is made to seek for knowledge. Your ability to seek for knowledge is bridled, is stopped once you are made to be a believer. Do you understand what I'm saying? Once you believe something without proof. Now, that curiosity of trying to find out stops. Now you cut it. You don't want to learn again because you know it. You already know it. Because you believe. So, no person can tell you anything. But once you always, you are always neutral. An awakened mind feel that he doesn't know nothing. Because we don't know. There are many millions and billions of things that are yet to be known in this world. So you see, with this type of mindset, you want to learn more. You want to always learn. Because inside you, you know that you don't know nothing. You don't know nothing. It is only a gullible, stupid, foolish person that believes that, you have known. That's why, there is a problem in this world. Once you know, according to Sadhguru, once you feel that you have known, you will see another person's debate as an insult to your ego. So how come, who are you to talk with me? I believe it and so it be. Before you know, it brings fight. But an awakened mind is very humble. Always seeking for knowledge. Always feeling that, I don't know nothing. Once you see, you have this consciousness that, I don't know nothing. You are programmed. It's not your consciousness is naturally programmed to seek for knowledge. You hear me? So that is what we exhibit here on Radio Biafra. We seek for knowledge from each other. And people listen. Therefore, once again, I welcome each and every one of you. Tatabo Botiorie, being 16th of January 2024. And I will open the lines in no distant time. But there is something before I open the lines. I will go into just few news headlines and say something. Because I want us to talk about, here we face reality. We are not sentimental. We shouldn't be carried away by sentiments. Once we go, now we go down and ask pertinent questions. On today's interaction, I would like us to discuss about Africa, black race, and foreign interference. And I would like people, when you call, you give your view. And, candidly, how do you think that we are going to come over this foreign interference in our land, in Africa in general, in our land in particular? We face reality. It's not, talking is very, very cheap, but doing, there the problem lies. That's why they say to know is good, but to do is God. Doing is practical. Doing is reality. We face reality. Africa and foreign interference. How do we go over this? That is the question I would like. I don't want people to call and start talking another thing. Stick to this topic, please. Africa and foreign interference. Because I come to understand that there is, honestly speaking, there is a general, conspiracy against black race. Both by color people, other colors, other races, against black race. We become a giant carcass. Whereby we shouldn't be allowed to do something in our own way. So, with things I'm going to introduce and clip I'm going to play, I will love you to please, when you call, you air your view. How do we, this is facing the reality. It's not about, just like you see in any democratic setting, where there is always election or there is opposition. Once you are not in power yet, you criticize the person in power, the president or prime minister. Oh, you don't do it like this. Oh, this is the policy you make. You see the way now opposition will be hammering every time on that. But once that opposition, the same opposition, once he is elected into power, he will see reality and his tone will change. Have you noticed that? Everywhere. His tone now, which that thing you have been hustling for since criticize, look at it. You are now in charge. Oh yeah, do it. Now, the reality will face you. Reality, you face reality and reality no reality. I think you are younger. You start now finding out things, facing the reality. But before that, let me go to IPOB press release of 16th January 2024. That is today. IPOB press release of 16th January 2024. It says, the headline is, the caption, collaborators who plan to jail our leader should know that IPOB is peaceful but also bites. That is today's IPOB press release. Now, let me read it. The Global Family and Movement of the Indigenous People of Biafra, IPOB, ably led by the indefatigable liberator Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, expresses concern over the collaboration between the federal government of Nigeria and some Igbo leaders to jail the IPOB leader Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. IPOB movement understands that the gang of criminal politicians and traditional rulers were behind the questionable decision of the Supreme Court judgment against Mazi Nnamdi Kanu on the 15th of December 2023. The evil plots of the Nigerian government, their Igbo criminal collaborators, and the Nigerian court judges against Mazi Nnamdi Kanu and IPOB will backfire. IPOB has been painstakingly following their shenanigans quietly and will respond proportionately in due time. The desperation to destroy Mazi Nnamdi Kanu and to save the fast-dying Nigeria will destroy Nigeria faster. Those working to destroy Mazi Nnamdi Kanu should know that their evil plots and activities are being monitored. None of the